You expect the holiest object in the Bible to feel like a museum piece. Nice lighting, respectful silence, maybe a velvet rope. Instead, you're standing in heat and smoke, with blood in the dirt, incense in your nose, and a gold-covered box behind curtains that could kill you for a clumsy hand. And the worst part is not even seeing it. The worst part is knowing it's there. Hey guys, tonight we begin with the Ark of the Covenant, not as a polished legend, but as a very real box in a very real tent, where everything smells like fire, leather, sweat, and fresh sacrifice. We're going to stand outside the sanctuary and feel that awful mix of awe and panic, while rings clink against carrying poles, and everybody acts normal in the least convincing way possible. We'll start with one long night near the most dangerous object in Israel, and with the unnerving fact that something treated this carefully could one day vanish so completely that people spent centuries whispering guesses into the dark. So, like the video and subscribe, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in ancient Israel, and tonight your problem is not taxes, neighbors, or whether your goat has eaten something stupid again. Your problem is that somewhere a few steps away, behind layers of fabric and rules, sits a gold-covered chest so sacred that people treat it the way you treat a live grenade wearing jewelry. The good news? You are still alive. The bad news? You would very much like to remain that way until morning. The camp is already breathing around you. Canvas snaps softly. Sand sticks to your feet. Smoke from the altar has settled into everything, so even the air tastes roasted. Not delicious roasted either. More like burnt meat, singed hair, hot metal, old ashes, and the thick medicinal sweetness of incense, trying its best to cover the rest, and absolutely failing. You get up anyway. Your sleeping place has left a lovely pattern on your skin, and your mouth tastes like dust and yesterday's regret. Somewhere nearby, an animal complains with the tragic confidence of a creature that does not yet know it is part of somebody's worship schedule. Men are moving with the serious, no-jokes energy of people who know one wrong move could turn the evening into a cautionary tale retold for generations. Straight ahead is the sanctuary complex. If complex can be used for a holy setup made of tent curtains, poles, frames, cords, and enough exact instructions to make flat-pack furniture look merciful. From a distance, it almost seems beautiful. White hangings, bronze gleam, firelight licking across metal. Then you get closer and catch the smell. Oh, the smell. Animal blood drying in dirt has a way of announcing itself. Fat crackles in the fire. Ash drifts. Leather straps creak. Wool catches every odor like it was invented to preserve mistakes. The priests move through it all in garments that must have felt magnificent in theory and deeply impractical in weather that alternates between blazing furnace and nighttime chill. You are not inside the innermost space, obviously. That is not your job, and frankly, you are thrilled about that. You are outside, close enough to hear things, and not close enough to die immediately, which is the biblical version of premium seating. From where you stand, you can hear the little metal sounds first. A ring knocks softly against a pole, then another. A careful, cautious clink. Nobody is tossing anything around. Nobody is slinging the sacred gear like luggage into the back of a cart. Every movement has the tense delicacy of someone transporting a sleeping cobra in a laundry basket. Behind the curtains is the object everyone speaks about with lowered voice and very dry mouth. Not a throne, exactly. Not just a chest. Not household furniture with nice trim. A box of acacia wood covered in gold, fitted with rings, meant to be carried and never grabbed like ordinary cargo. You know the shape of it before you ever see it clearly, because people describe it the way people describe lightning scars or dangerous wells, with detail and with caution. Gold top, cherubim over it, wings spread, poles through the rings. Do not touch. That last part is really the headline. You stand there and try not to look too interested, which is difficult, because the entire camp seems arranged around this one impossible fact. The living God's presence is associated with a box in a tent. And everybody has agreed that this makes perfect sense, while also behaving like they are one accidental fingertip away from disaster. The curtains stir a little as someone passes behind them. Linen whispers. A priest's foot scrapes the ground. Somewhere bells tinkle faintly from a garment hem, delicate and unnerving, like festive accessories for a man walking near active danger. The incense thickens, and for one, dizzy. Second, your eyes water so badly you wonder whether this is holiness or just smoke attacking your face. Probably both. Heat rolls off the altar in waves. It dries your lips. It settles under your clothes. It turns the whole courtyard into a giant outdoor oven with a strict dress code. Flies circle with wicked determination. They are the one group here completely relaxed. You shift your weight and glance towards the tent again. The ark is hidden, and somehow that makes it worse. A visible threat can be avoided. A hidden one becomes huge in your imagination. Your mind starts furnishing the darkness for you. You picture the gold catching low firelight. You picture the cherubim overshadowing the cover. You picture men carrying it by poles, arms rigid, faces carefully blank, each step measured like they are crossing a frozen lake and suspect the ice hates them personally. And everyone around you knows stories. Nobody has to give a speech. They just act with that special kind of caution people use around sacred things and venomous animals. There are procedures. Cover it in the right order. Carry it the right way. Approach at the right time. Burn the right incense. Wash. Wait. Do not improvise. This is not the part of your national life where creativity is encouraged. You begin to understand why even strong men would rather haul stones than be assigned to this. A stone is honest. It sits there. It crushes your foot in a straightforward manner. This is different. This is invisible consequence. This is trying to sleep 20 feet from the holiest object on earth, while your brain helpfully reviews every rule you might have forgotten. Was it this curtain first, or that one? Was somebody supposed to cover something before the poles went in? Did anyone wash properly? Did anyone glance too long? Did anyone breathe wrong in the wrong direction? Wonderful. You live in a world where liturgical details feel like handling explosives. With fabric, the night deepens, voices lower, fires pop. The stars spread above the camp with no concern whatsoever for your nerves. The sanctuary stands in the middle, like the still center of a storm, quiet and terrible. And you, lucky you, are close enough to hear one last faint clink of ring against pole from within. That sound stays with you, because this box will not remain quietly behind curtains forever. It will move through wilderness camps, through panic, through battlefields, through processions and temples, and the worst decisions people can make around holy things. It will be feared, mishandled, celebrated, hidden, and eventually lost so completely that later generations will fill caves, mountains, chapels, and secret chambers with rumors about where it went. But tonight, it is still here, close, covered, untouchable, and you are going to try somehow to make it until morning. Before the ark can go missing, you have to know what kind of nightmare object it was to keep around. Morning comes hard in the wilderness. The cold leaves fast, the heat barges in, and the sand gets personal immediately. It is in your sandals, in your food, in your teeth, and somehow in places that suggest the desert bears a private grudge against you. The camp is already stirring with that familiar blend of devotion and logistical despair, because portable holiness sounds inspiring right up until you have to pack it. This is not one nice little chest with a lid. This is an entire traveling sanctuary made of frames, curtains, sockets, pegs, poles, altars, utensils, basins, cords, coverings, and enough finely tuned procedure to make a military relocation look casual. Everyone has jobs. Everyone knows their lane. Everyone is also one mistake away from becoming the reason people stop talking when you walk by. And in the center of all of it is the ark. You don't stroll up to it. You don't peek in. You don't give it a quick wipe because there's dust on the gold. This is not spring cleaning. This is the ancient equivalent of moving a highly unstable royal heirloom with a death clause. The signal comes that the camp is breaking. Suddenly, the whole place changes mood. Tents come down. Children get scooped up. Animals complain in several keys. Men start lifting things that were definitely lighter in theory. Leather straps slap against shoulders. Wooden poles knock together. Somebody somewhere is already arguing near a cart because of course he is. But around the sanctuary, the noise tightens. The closer you get, the more everyone drops into that clipped, careful energy people use around lit candles, angry snakes, and rich relatives. Priests move first, always first. That part matters. The rest of the camp can be halfway to the horizon before certain holy things are even looked at. The ark does not travel exposed. First, it has to disappear. You stand close, enough to see the sanctuary workers moving with grim concentration, and it is somehow more unnerving in daylight. At night, mystery does some of the work for you. In the morning sun, you can actually watch the checklist unfold, and it feels less like worship and more like a bomb squad with tassels. The inner curtain comes into play first. That thick woven veil, the one that usually marks off the most holy place, gets used like a cover. You watch men enter where almost nobody goes, and even from outside you feel your shoulders tense. They are not casual. Nobody is saying, "Relax, it's fine." Nobody is whistling. Nobody is improvising. Good. Improvisation around the ark has a terrible track record. The veil is draped over the chest, then another covering, then another layer on top of that. Leather from sea creatures, durable outer skin, and beneath that precious cloth and gold hidden under fabric, like something too dangerous for daylight. By the time they're done, the object that terrified the camp is now a layered bundle with poles, which would almost make it less threatening. Almost, because everybody still knows what is under there. The poles stay in the rings. That detail matters like your life depends on it, because for some people it absolutely does. The whole point is that human hands are not meant to just latch onto the ark itself. The poles are the buffer, the safe mode, the please do not raw dog the sacred object solution. And even then, Only certain men get anywhere near it. Not every Levite, not every priestly helper, not every enthusiastic volunteer who wants to show initiative. This is not a team-building opportunity. This is highly restricted access with consequences nobody wants demonstrated live. You can feel the tensions spread through the camp while the coverings go on. People look, then look away. Children are hushed. Even the animals seem less obnoxious for a minute, though that may just be wishful thinking. The ark is hidden now, but hidden in a way that makes its presence louder, like a covered cage at the back of a room. You know something alive is under there. You just don't want to be the one who checks. And now comes the carrying. The men assigned to bear it step into place beside the poles, shoulders under wood, arms set, faces serious in that exhausted wilderness way where everyone looks sunburned, underhydrated, and one bad instruction away from a nervous collapse. Acacia wood overlaid with gold is not light. Add fittings, craftsmanship, and a sacred reputation sharp enough to cut the mood in half, and suddenly this is less ceremonial procession and more group project from hell. They lift. The first strain shows in the neck before anywhere else. Then the jaw, then the little shift in footing as everybody adjusts to the weight at once and prays the others counted correctly. The poles creak. Sand scrapes under heels. A ring gives one small metallic knock, and 3 nearby men flinch like the object itself just cleared its throat. You walk with the line at a distance. That distance matters too, because the ark is not the only thing moving. The whole sanctuary is being dismantled and hauled in stages. Curtains are folded. Frames are taken down. Bronze pieces go one way, utensils another. The lampstand, the table, the altars, all of it has to be covered and carried with the same maddening precision. It is the holiest moving day in human history, and every single part of it looks sweaty. Nothing about this is sleek. The curtains are heavy with dust, smoke, and the smell of yesterday's sacrifices. Wool and linen have trapped every odor available. Ash, oil, hot fabric, human sweat, and that unmistakable metallic ghost of blood. The wooden frames leave splinters if you get stupid. Bronze catches the sun like a personal insult. Pegs and cords multiply when you're not looking. It's biblical IKEA, except none of the pieces are optional and the manual can kill you. The Levites fan out under loads that make their shoulders dip. Some are carrying bars, some wrapped furnishings, some bundles of fabric big enough to swallow a man. The desert doesn't care that this is sacred work. The wind still blows grit into your eyes. The heat still climbs your back. Your throat still dries out by mid-morning until swallowing feels like chewing old leather. And through it all, the ark moves under its coverings. Not visible, not ordinary, not discussed lightly. You start to understand that most people in camp would almost never see it directly. They live around it instead. They camp by arrangement around a center they do not touch. Their lives are literally organized in rings around hidden holiness. Families wake, eat, argue, mend sandals, chase children, swat flies, and try not to get kicked by livestock, all while the most dangerous object they know sits under layers of fabric nearby. You feel it working on everybody. It means your national center is not a palace, not a king, not a city wall, a tent with a box in it that everyone treats like concentrated thunder. When the camp stops, the whole ordeal reverses, which is terrific news if what you wanted was to do the same stressful task again, but now tired. By the time a new location is chosen, everyone already smells like cooked wool and old sweat. Tempers are fraying. Children are sticky with dust. The animals have left fresh contributions all over the assembly area. Somewhere, someone has stepped in exactly what you think he stepped in. Barely anyone reacts anymore. This is just life now. The tabernacle goes up piece by piece. Posts set, frames aligned, curtains stretched, cords tightened, coverings layered. The work has that frustrating quality of looking simple from far away and deeply cursed up close. You see men squinting into sunlight, muttering under their breath while they fit things, together in exact order. No one gets to say, "Close enough." Close enough is not a category here, and only after the place is ready does the ark go in. That detail hangs over everything. The room must be prepared before the object arrives. You don't leave it sitting on the side while someone fixes the drapery. You don't prop it up beside a stack of sockets and have lunch. The holy center gets settled where it belongs, and everybody else works around that fact. When they carry it toward the innermost space, the air around you changes again. It is hard to explain, except your body notices before your thoughts do. Voices drop, movements sharpen. Even men who have done this before do not look comfortable. Familiarity has not made them casual. It has made them more aware, which is usually how danger works. The coverings stay on through the move. The poles stay in place. The bearers walk carefully with the stiff, deliberate steps of people carrying something weighty, sacred, and very interested in proper boundaries. Once inside, once settled, once everyone is sure the placement is right, then the layers and arrangement can be handled by those allowed to handle them. Allowed. That word keeps governing the whole scene. You begin to see that the ark's power in camp life comes partly from absence. Most people know it by restriction. You know where it is. You know what it means. You know not to mess with it. But for long stretches, you do not see it. You live with the nearness of it the way people live beside deep water or a cliff edge, aware, respectful, and maybe a little irritated that one feature of the landscape has so many opinions. Around the sanctuary, the priests maintain the boundary. They wash, they dress, they tend fire, they arrange bread, they burn incense, they inspect things, they monitor what comes in and what must stay out. Their whole workday is one long sequence of exact actions, performed in heat, while wearing garments that probably looked glorious in ceremonial sketches and felt miserable after 6 hours near an altar. Linen sticks when you sweat. Wool holds smells. Gold ornaments are elegant right up until the sun turns them into decorative cookware. And still, they do it. Because this center has to be kept. You watch daily life pulse around it. Women grind grain. Men mend harnesses. Kids run until somebody yells. Goats nose into things they shouldn't. Bread bakes. Water skins get passed around. Quail, manna, complaints, dust. The full wilderness experience. Human beings remain stubbornly human, even with divine presence in the neighborhood. Especially then, really. 1 minute, someone is speaking in hushed tones about holiness. The next minute, he is arguing about portions, blistered feet, or whether that tent rope was moved by a child or a donkey. The ark does not eliminate ordinary life. It sits in the middle of it, like a blazing reminder that ordinary life is happening under extraordinary terms. And now we arrive at the part nobody talks about. The fear hits you in practical places. It's not just vague reverence. It's procedural dread. You can feel it in the way people memorize instructions, in the way certain tasks are handed down carefully, in the way men glance twice at coverings and poles before touching anything. This is not the warm, fuzzy comfort of a decorative religious object in a peaceful corner. This feels less like worship equipment and more like being assigned responsibility for a thunderstorm. The ark has to be transported without being touched directly. It has to be covered before carriers approach. It has to be borne by the right people. It has to remain separate from ordinary handling. Every piece of that creates a strange camp psychology. Everybody wants it near, and nobody wants to be careless around it. You live beside the nation's holiest power source, except the warning label is mostly oral tradition and terror. Stories travel through camp like smoke. Maybe you hear about men who treated sacred things too casually. Maybe you hear whispers of judgment, of sudden deaths, of moments when the line between holy and common got crossed, and the result was not a stern memo. Ancient Israel does not do harmless object lessons. It does unforgettable ones. So people keep their distance, not because they are indifferent, because they are very much not indifferent. You feel it during festivals, during assemblies, during those moments when the camp gathers and all eyes turn toward the center. The sanctuary curtains stir in wind that smells like dust and smoke. Priests move in and out. Trumpets sound. Sacrifice burns. And behind the layers, somewhere beyond what you can see, sits the ark under cherubim, hidden and decisive. You can't domesticate that. You can build around it, camp around it, march with it, cover it, carry it, fear it, sing near it, bring offerings because of it. But you cannot turn it into a mascot. It does not exist to make everybody feel cozy. Its whole presence says the opposite. There is a center to this people that does not belong to them. Out here in the wilderness, that lands in your chest like a dropped stone. Because wilderness strips you down. There's no permanent house, no settled city, no polished stone complex making everything look stable. Just tents, dust, hunger, weather, and movement. In that setting, the ark becomes the portable center of a portable people. The place where heaven and earth are treated as dangerously close, even while everything else is packed onto shoulders and headed for the next stop. And that makes every march feel loaded. When the camp sets out, tribes move in order. Standards rise. People gather children, animals, tools, food, and whatever remains of their patience. Sandals slap against hard ground. Packs creak. Water sloshes. The sun climbs and starts roasting everyone equally. Somewhere, a baby wails with the stamina of a prophet. Somewhere else, a man sneezes and gets dust in his beard. Ahead, or in the midst of all this, depending on the moment, the sanctuary elements move with them, including the ark, covered, borne, guarded by procedure. You stare at the bundle and try to reconcile what it is with how it looks, because from a distance, under layers and poles, it could almost pass for ordinary freight. That's the weirdness of it. The holiest object in the camp sometimes looks like wrapped cargo. But nobody treats it that way. The posture of every person nearby gives it away. No one swings it. No one jokes while shifting grip. No one sets a lunch bag on top. You laugh at that thought, then immediately feel bad for laughing at all. That's what the ark does to your brain. It turns you into a person who can't fully relax around furniture. Days pass like this, then weeks, The desert keeps being awful in repetitive ways. Lips crack, skin burns. Water is precious. Food gets monotonous enough to start arguments. The camp smells by turns of cooking grain, sweating bodies, dung, tanned leather, and sacrificial fire. Night brings chill and stars. Morning brings stiffness and flies. Through all of it, the tabernacle rises and falls, rises and falls, rises and falls. And every time, the ark sits at the center of the whole exhausting enterprise. Sometimes you catch little details that stay with you. The mark the poles leave on a carrier's shoulder, the tiny hesitation before entering the holy space, the way a priest checks a covering twice, then once more, the metallic whisper of gold fittings beneath cloth. The fact that even after all this repetition, nobody acts bored. Tired? Yes. Sweaty? Absolutely. Sunburned beyond dignity? Often. But not bored, because boredom requires safety. This whole arrangement has many virtues. Safe and casual are not among them. So the ark's earliest life is not in a grand stone temple with polished floors and controlled access and solemn choirs echoing off cedar. Not yet. Its first years are rougher than that. Hard ground, tent pegs, moving camp lines, dust storms, aching backs, sacred architecture assembled by hand and taken down again before anyone can get attached to the view. The ark belongs to that world first. A world where holiness travels by pole. A world where curtains matter, hands matter, order matters, and one wrong act can turn a work assignment into a funeral. You end another long day near the sanctuary, feet throbbing, clothes sour with sweat and smoke. The camp settles by degrees, fires lower, voices blur. Somewhere a child cries and then finally sleeps. Somewhere a donkey produces a sound like rusty hinges having an emotional breakdown. The ark is inside again, hidden where it belongs. You do not see it, you feel the fact of it. That is enough, because by now you understand why everyone talks about it the way they do, why the procedures are so exact, why the poles remain such a big deal, why the whole camp organizes itself around an object most people hardly ever see. This is not just a box. It is the burning center of a people still learning that divine nearness is not the same thing as divine manageability. And later, people will forget that. They will drag it into situations like it's a guarantee. They will treat it like a war trophy, a solution, a symbol they can deploy. They will learn, repeatedly and often painfully, that the ark does not become safe because you are familiar with it. But that disaster is still ahead. For now, in the wilderness, it remains what it has always been. Covered, carried, feared, and kept at the center by men with trembling respect and extremely sore shoulders. And the camp sleeps around it, as if anyone sleeping 20 paces from concentrated holiness could ever be fully at ease. And then, because human beings are consistent across history, someone decides the best use for the terrifying sacred box is war, not prayer, not repentance, not a long, awkward national meeting where everybody admits things have gone badly for reasons that may involve them personally. No, you lose a battle, panic immediately, and say, in effect, what if we bring the dangerous holy object and just point it at the enemy? You are at Ebenezer, and the mood is sour enough to curdle milk. The camp smells like blood, churned dirt, fierce sweat, and yesterday's cook fire. Men sit on the ground staring at nothing. Others pace. Some are binding wounds with strips of cloth already stiff from old use and fresh bleeding. Somewhere nearby, a man is trying not to cry out while somebody else digs splinters and gravel from his arm with all the bedside manner of a butcher repairing sandals. Israel has just been hit hard by the Philistines. 4,000 dead. That number lands in a camp, like a boulder through a roof. Everywhere you look, there are gaps where men should be. Blankets folded around bodies. Weapons stacked beside owners who won't need them. Friends talking too fast, because if they stop, they'll have to feel it. And into that heavy, miserable silence comes the bright idea. Bring the ark. You can almost feel the surge of hope before the order is even finished. Not wise hope, desperate hope. The kind that grabs the nearest sacred thing like a drowning man grabs floating wood. People start straightening up, voices sharpen. Messengers are sent to Shiloh. Priests are summoned. The atmosphere changes from grief to frantic expectation so fast it gives you whiplash. Because obviously, this will fix everything. What could possibly go wrong with taking the holiest object in your national life and using it like battlefield equipment? By the time the ark arrives, the whole camp is vibrating. You hear it before you see anything, shouting, spreading in waves. Men, hollering themselves hoarse, armor clattering as soldiers jump to their feet. Dust kicks up under hundreds of sandals. A trumpet blasts somewhere in the chaos. Then another. Men who looked half dead an hour ago are suddenly roaring like they personally invented victory. The ark comes in under escort, and even from a distance, you feel the old tension around it. Still covered with significance, still ringed with rules, still not remotely ordinary. But now it is moving through a military camp full of exhausted, frightened men who have decided holiness is a strategy. You hear that idea and immediately want to step backward. Hophni and Phinehas are there with it, Eli's sons, and they carry themselves with the kind of confidence that makes you want to hide your valuables. The ark enters camp, and the shout that goes up is so loud the ground seems to kick back. It rolls across the valley and slams into the Philistine lines. On the other side, the Philistines hear it and freeze. At first, they don't know what caused the uproar. Then word spreads through their camp. Israel's God has come into the camp. The sacred object is there. The thing at the center of Israel's worship, the thing tied to wilderness stories and old terror, and all the memories people tell around fires when they want children to stop interrupting. Suddenly, the Philistine camp does not feel as confident. You can see them shifting, muttering, looking at one another over spear shafts. They are not idiots. They know enough to be alarmed. Men start saying things with the energy of office workers discovering the small wiring issue is actually the building on fire. There is talk of disaster. There is talk of the plagues that hit Egypt. There is a lot of, we are so unbelievably cooked. Then, because fear can turn into aggression in about 3 seconds, their officers start barking at them to get hold of themselves. Fight, fight, hard. If you're going down, don't go down as slaves. So now both camps are terrified, just in different directions. Israel thinks victory has arrived in a box. Philistia thinks a divine weapon has entered the chat. The battle begins, and it goes very badly. Not a little badly. Not, well, that was disappointing. Catastrophically, humiliatingly, what just happened badly. The lines break. Men run. Others fall where they stand. Dust fills your mouth and eyes until the whole field turns into a brown blur of screaming, metal and panic. Bodies hit the ground. Shields go down under trampling feet. Orders disappear in the noise. 30,000 Israelite foot soldiers die. Hophni dies. Phinehas dies. And the ark is taken. That part almost doesn't fit in your head at first. It feels impossible in the dumbest, most awful way. The thing nobody handles casually, the thing moved under layers and poles and dread, the center of camp, the dangerous box from the tent, is now in Philistine hands. The battle ends in collapse. Men flee to their tents. Survivors stagger home looking like they've been dragged through a quarry backward. One of them runs all the way to Shiloh with torn clothes and dirt on his head. The ancient Near Eastern version of "Everything is on fire and I have no good updates." You are there when he arrives. The city can tell from one look that this is bad news. Bad news has a posture. It has a face. It has dust glued to sweat and the eyes of a man who has seen too much by lunchtime. People begin crying out before he even finishes speaking. Eli is sitting by the road, old and heavy and blind, waiting. He's not waiting for the casualty numbers first. He's waiting for word of the ark. You hear that, and suddenly the whole disaster makes a different kind of sense. The messenger reports the slaughter. Your sons are dead. Israel has fled, and the ark of God has been taken. At that, Eli falls backward off his seat, neck broken, dead. It is one of the bleakest accidental chair-related incidents in history. And because this day was apparently built in a workshop that specializes in emotional overkill, Phinehas's pregnant wife goes into labor when she hears the news. The child is born into a house ripped open by grief. She names him Ichabod because the glory has departed, and then she dies too. So by the end of this disaster, you have a battlefield annihilation, dead priests, a dead judge, a dead mother, a newborn named after national collapse, and the ark gone. And now we arrive at the part nobody in Philistia enjoyed as much as they expected. Because at first, of course, it looks fantastic. You are a Philistine soldier hauling home the most impressive war trophy imaginable. Gold-covered sacred chest from the enemy camp. Tremendous. Elite prize. Incredible for morale. You can dine out on this story for years. Men clap you on the back. People crowd around to stare. Somebody is already exaggerating his role in the capture by a factor of 6. The ark is taken to Ashdod, into the house of Dagon. This is the ancient version of putting the rival team's championship banner in your own clubhouse. Dominance display. Public statement. Your God beat their God. Your city won. Their sacred object is now decor. So they place the ark beside Dagon, and you can just feel every bad decision in that sentence stacking up like unstable pottery. The temple smells of incense, oil smoke, old stone, and the trapped heat of too many bodies in one space. Priests finish the evening rites. Doors are shut. Everyone goes home feeling extremely pleased with themselves. Morning comes. The temple attendants open up, shuffle inside, probably still chewing yesterday's bread, and stop dead. Dagon is on his face before the ark, not in a graceful, poetic way. He has fallen, full statue sprawl, nose to floor. It is the posture of someone who has either bowed down or slipped on divine banana peel. Now imagine being the temple staff. You came in expecting routine cleanup, and instead, your national god is face planted in front of the enemy's sacred box. You are not prepared. Nobody is prepared. There is no official handbook for what to do when your deity falls over in the night. So they do what embarrassed humans always do. They stand him back up and pretend this is normal. Maybe a tremor, someone mutters. Maybe the bass shifted. Maybe there was a draft strong enough to knock over a giant idol, which is not how drafts work. But this is a stressful morning. Men grunt and strain and haul Dagon upright again. Dust gets everywhere. Sandals scrape on stone. Somebody pinches a finger and says a word not fit for temple use. Then they go home again. Morning comes again, and this time it is worse, much worse. Dagon is down again before the ark, only now his head and hands are broken off and lying on the threshold, torso in one place, parts in another. It looks less like a religious incident and more like the world's most upsetting home renovation accident. The threshold itself becomes a problem after that. Nobody wants to step there anymore, because your God has spent the night introducing himself to the floor, and the chest from Israel is still just sitting there, unmoved, unbothered, absolutely ruining the room. But the statue situation is only the beginning. The real misery starts spreading through Ashdod. People begin getting sick. The city fills with panic. Bodies break out in painful swellings. Tumors, boils, eruptions, some vile swelling that turns ordinary movement into a negotiation. Sitting hurts. Walking hurts. Existing near your own skin becomes offensive. You can't lean comfortably against a wall. You definitely can't wear a belt without regretting every choice you made this week. And then there are the mice, or rats, rodents anyway, small filthy things with twitching noses and excellent timing for making a bad situation worse. They are in granaries, under baskets, in corners, rustling through stores, contaminating food, multiplying the atmosphere of curse by about 30%. So now you have disease, vermin, dread, and a sacred box from another nation glaring at your city like an unwanted house guest with supernatural credentials. Ashdod decides it has had enough. The lords of the Philistines are called together. There is no dignity left in the meeting. The conversation is basically, why is this happening? Followed by everyone looking at the ark and then looking away again. The answer becomes obvious. Move it. Send it to Gath. Excellent. Terrific. A cursed package transfer. The ancient equivalent of forwarding an email marked urgent and hoping it detonates in someone else's inbox. So the ark goes to Gath. You are in the streets when it arrives, and at first there's excitement. Then there's unease. Then, very quickly, there is the awful realization that the thing from Ashdod has brought its whole weather system with it. The hand of God is heavy against the city. Men great and small are afflicted. Panic starts climbing the walls. Families bolt doors. People speak in lowered voices. No one wants to be too near the object, and no one wants to admit that out loud. The city becomes one long groan. Every house has a complaint in it. Swelling, fever, terror, mourning, rodents scratching in walls through the night. Sleep gets thin. Tempers get short. Market chatter turns into rumor management. You stand in a lane that smells like baking bread, donkey dung, and medicinal poultices, and all anybody wants to discuss is whose city is getting rid of the box next. Gath votes no confidence immediately. Send it to Ekron. By now, the ark's reputation travels faster than the cart. So when it approaches Ekron, the people don't welcome it. They shriek, not metaphorically. They cry out because they know exactly what this is now. You can hear the outrage from the gate. They have brought the ark of the God of Israel to us to kill us and our people. It is the sound of a city seeing a plague wagon pull in and realizing they are somehow the next stop on the route. Nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to house it. Nobody wants to be the official who says, Maybe we should keep this in the civic center for a while. The terror is complete. Death is in the city. Those who don't die are struck with the same awful afflictions. The cry of the place goes up to heaven. Every alley feels infected with fear. Every conversation circles back to the same gold-covered problem. Children are hushed away from windows. Men gather in knots, arguing in the street while flies orbit their heads, and the summer heat makes everybody smell worse than usual. Months pass. 7 of them. 7 months of this thing ricocheting through Philistine territory like a divine complaint department. 7 months of people waking up and asking whether the boils are new, whether the mice got into the grain again, whether anyone has a plan that does not involve dying in escalating discomfort. By this point, the lords of the Philistines are beyond triumph. They are exhausted. Nobody is bragging anymore. The war trophy has become an administrative nightmare with legions. So they summon priests and diviners and ask the question every cursed object owner asks eventually: what do we do with it? The answer is not keep it. The answer is send it back, but do not send it back empty. That would be rude. And when you are trying to stop a supernatural beating, rude feels unwise. So they prepare a guilt offering. Golden tumors, golden mice, tiny metal replicas of the very things ruining their lives, which is both sincere and, frankly, hilarious. Imagine the workshop. Artisans hammering out little gold rodents and ornamental plague lumps while trying not to think too hard about why this is now their job. The room smells of charcoal, hot metal, sweat, and intense regret. Someone holds up a finished golden mouse and nobody laughs because everyone is too afraid. Then comes the transport plan. No Philistine wants to escort the ark personally any farther than absolutely necessary. That much is clear. So they get a new cart, new matters, fresh wood, untainted. They take 2 milk cows that have never been yoked and hitch them up. Their calves are shut up at home. Natural expectation says those cows should turn back, pull toward their young, wander, or generally fail to behave like precision delivery staff. Instead, if the affliction really came from Israel's God, the cows will head straight toward Beth Shemesh. You are standing there when they set this whole strange little experiment in motion. The cart creaks. The cows shift and toss their heads. The ark is loaded with the gold offerings. Men step back fast, because by now everyone has learned not to linger around this thing unless they are actively looking for trouble. Dust hangs in the air. Flies buzz at the eyes of the cattle. The Philistine lords watch from behind with all the confidence of gamblers who have already lost too much. Then the cows start moving. Not wandering, not circling, straight. They go along the road to Beth Shemesh, lowing as they walk, and it is the saddest, strangest parade imaginable. They are still mothers. They still want their calves. You hear it in the sound they make. But they keep going. One road, one direction, no turning aside right or left. And the Philistine rulers follow at a distance to the border, because of course they do. You would too. At this point, you need visual confirmation that the nightmare package has actually left the building. On the Israelite side, the people of Beth Shemesh are harvesting wheat in the valley. It is hot, dry work. Chaff sticks to your skin. Dust glues itself to the sweat on your neck. You are bent over in the field when somebody looks up and sees the cart. Then the ark. Joy hits the place like a sudden storm. Men shout. Women run from the edges of the field. Harvest work is abandoned on the spot because priorities have changed dramatically. The cart comes into the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh and stops there beside a great stone. The wood of the cart is split up for fuel. The cows are offered as a burnt offering. Levites take down the ark and the box beside it with the little golden horrors from Philistia. Everybody is relieved, stunned, elated. The cursed souvenir has come home. But the morning isn't over yet, because this is still the ark, and relief has a way of making people stupid. Some of the men of Beth Shemesh look into it. Maybe curiosity, maybe excitement, maybe that old human disease that convinces you the warning must be for somebody else. You have just watched the thing humiliate Philistine cities for months, but apparently there is still room in the schedule for one more terrible decision. The result is immediate and devastating. Men fall. Mourning breaks out. The celebration curdles on the tongue. 1 minute, the ark has returned, and everyone is crying with joy. The next minute, bodies are on the ground, and people are backing away in horror, because of course they are. Of course, this object has managed to turn homecoming into mass grief before the dust has even settled. The question spreads through Beth Shemesh in a whisper and a wail. Who can stand before the Lord, this holy God? And also, much more practically, who can take this thing away from us? That is where the section of the story leaves you. With the ark no longer a triumph for Philistia, not exactly a comfort for Israel, and everybody involved newly aware that this is not a box you own so much as a box you survive near. It has crossed battlefields, toppled idols, wrecked cities, and turned victory chants into emergency meetings. It has become the ancient world's least desirable delivery. And somewhere up the road, another town is about to find out that once this thing arrives, your day is no longer your own. The ark comes home, but not in the neat, triumphant way anyone was hoping for. You are still standing in the wreckage at Beth Shemesh, and the mood has gone from harvest festival to funeral so fast it makes your head spin. A little while ago, people were shouting, chopping up the cart for firewood, feeding sacrificial smoke into the sky, and grinning like a nightmare had finally ended. Now there are bodies. There is weeping. There is that awful, stunned silence between cries when everybody is thinking the same thing and nobody wants to say it first. The ark is back. That is somehow not comforting. You smell trampled wheat, ash, hot stone, animal blood, and fierce sweat cooking in the afternoon sun. Flies are already finding the edges of things they should not be finding. Men stand with their hands hanging uselessly at their sides. Women pull children back by the shoulders. Nobody wants to go near the ark, and nobody wants to be the person who suggests staying near it. So messengers are sent to Kiriath Jearim. Not because this town is dying to host the most high-maintenance holy object in Israel, but because somebody has to do something. The message is basically, the Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord, and we would love, with great respect and considerable urgency, for it to become your problem now. You wait for the reply like a man waiting to hear whether the snake in his house can be relocated before nightfall. The people of Kiriath Jearim come and take up the task. They bring the ark up to the house of Abinadab on the hill. Up the hill matters. Everything with this object seems to involve effort, elevation, and the unsettling sense that one wrong move could turn your afternoon into a cautionary tale. You watch it go with that mixed feeling people get when an ambulance leaves their street carrying somebody else's emergency. Relief first, then guilt about the relief. At Abinadab's house, they consecrate Eleazar his son to guard the ark. Guard it, not decorate around it, not show it to visitors. Guard it. The thing settles there like a thundercloud parked in one family's orbit. Life goes on around it, but not casually. You don't hang laundry near it and whistle. You don't lean on the doorframe with your lunch and chat. You keep your distance and your respect. Years pass, a lot of years. Not 1 or 2 awkward seasons while people sort things out. Decades. 20 years with the ark sitting in Kiriath Jearim while kingdoms shift, old men die, boys grow beards, roofs need patching, fields need sowing, and memory starts doing what memory does. It turns emergencies into stories and stories into habits. Children are born into a world where the ark is already on that hill, already wrapped in dread, already not for touching. The smell of daily life keeps going around it. Bread baking, sheep pens, wet clay after rain, smoke from dung fires, garlic on a knife, laundry that never quite smells clean because nobody in this century gets to smell truly clean. And still the ark sits there. Then David rises. By the time you are dealing with him, the mood in Israel has changed. Saul is gone. The throne has shifted. David has taken Jerusalem and made it his city. Energy is high. Confidence is high. Music is never far away. Men are talking about a new center, a new kingdom, a new era, and all the bright, dangerous confidence that comes with a leader who has won enough battles to start believing momentum is the same thing as invincibility. David wants the ark brought up. Of course he does. You can see the appeal. If Jerusalem is going to be the heart of the kingdom, then the ark belongs there too. Politically, spiritually, symbolically, it all feels enormous. It feels right. It feels like one of those decisions people will sing about later with excellent percussion and very selective memory. So 30,000 chosen men are gathered. That number gives the whole thing a parade meets military operation quality. You are not looking at a quiet little transfer with careful hands and whispered instructions. You are looking at a national event. Dust rises under thousands of feet. Officers shout. Men arrange themselves. Instruments appear in numbers that suggest nobody has learned a single thing from previous ark-related disasters. And then you see the transport plan, a new cart. Again, you blink at it. You blink again. It is one of those moments when history leans over and says, with incredible disrespect, "Would you like to make the same mistake twice?" The ark is taken from the house of Abinadab, which is on the hill, and set on the new cart. Uzzah and Ahio, sons of Abinadab, drive it. Ahio goes before the ark. Uzzah is nearby. They know this object. It has been in their family's orbit for years. Familiarity is creeping around the edges now, and familiarity with the ark is like getting relaxed around a live furnace. You do not want to get relaxed around a live furnace. The procession starts moving. David and all the house of Israel are celebrating before the Lord with songs and lyres and harps and tambourines and castanets and cymbals. The noise is enormous. Not graceful, polished concert hall enormous. Outdoor, sweaty, dust in your teeth enormous. It rattles in your ribs. Kids run alongside until adults drag them back. Sandals slap dry earth. A donkey in the distance complains like a man being personally insulted. The ark rolls forward on the cart. and that sound is not reassuring. Wheels hit stones, axles creak, wood groans. The road is rough because, of course, it is rough. This is ancient hill country, not a paved ceremonial boulevard with helpful railings and liability signage. Every rut matters. Every jolt makes your shoulders tense. The box that nobody was meant to treat like luggage is riding over uneven ground while people play instruments with the confidence of men who think this is going very well. It is not going very well. When they come to the threshing floor of Nacon, the oxen stumble. You hear it before you fully see it. The scrape, the sudden shift, the ugly lurch of weight going where it should not go. A cartwheel jerks. Wood complains. One of the oxen snorts sharply, legs scrambling on loose surface. The whole procession buckles around that single bad moment. And Uzzah reaches out. It is so fast. Just the reflex of a hand trying to steady what looks like it might fall. Human instinct. You see a sacred object tipping. Your body moves before your theology catches up. His hand goes to the ark. Then everything stops. The music dies as if the air itself has clenched shut. Cymbals stop mid-clash. Voices cut off. Feet freeze in dust. The oxen stand there heaving, their flanks twitching with effort, while a silence falls so hard it feels like being slapped. Uzzah is dead. One heartbeat there. Next heartbeat, on the ground. No dramatic speech. No time for a final meaningful glance. Just a man dropped into the dust beside the thing he tried to steady. The smell of churned earth rises around him. Somebody makes a small shocked sound and then cannot seem to make another. The whole parade stands there in a ring of disbelief, staring at the body and the cart and the ark as all the joy drains out through a crack in the afternoon. This is the part where celebration turns into everyone rethinking every choice that led here. David is angry. You can feel it coming off him, hot and immediate. Angry because Uzzah is dead. Angry because the day has broken in public. Angry because what should have been triumph has become horror in front of 30,000 witnesses and a full band. Angry because the ark has once again refused to behave like a symbol with good stage manners. He names the place Peres Uzzah, outbreak against Uzzah. Nobody who stood in that dust is going to forget the place anyway. But anger does not last long by itself around a thing like this. It curdles into fear. David is afraid of the Lord that day. You see it in the way the whole operation collapses. No more singing, no more smiling confidence, no more bring it up to me with royal swagger. The question now is blunt and immediate. How can the ark of the Lord come to me? And for once, nobody has a quick answer. So David refuses to move it into the city of David. Refuses. Full stop. You can almost hear the internal brakes screeching. No more procession. No more ceremonial entry. The route is done. The parade has hit a wall and died there with a man beside a cartwheel. The ark is diverted to the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite. Imagine being Obed-Edom for a moment. Your day begins ordinary. Maybe not pleasant, because ancient life is never exactly spa-like, but ordinary. You have chores, animals to deal with, dust in places dust should not fit, bread to tear, water to haul. Then by sunset, the king has effectively rerouted the holiest dangerous object in the nation onto your property because Plan A ended in a corpse. No pressure. The ark stays there 3 months. And now everyone waits to see what happens. By this point, the country has enough ark history to expect either blessing so intense it makes your neighbors jealous, or catastrophe so dramatic it gets turned into place names. There does not seem to be much middle ground. So people watch Obed-Edom's house the way neighbors watch a suspiciously quiet fireworks stand in midsummer. They keep looking over, waiting for either an explosion or a miracle. What they get is blessing. His household prospers. Things go well. The man and all he has are blessed. Word spreads, because of course it does. Good news travels even faster when everyone expected smoking ruins. You hear about fuller storehouses, healthy flocks, household strength, life going right in a way that has the unmistakable smell of favor on it. That changes the conversation. David hears it. And suddenly, the ark is not just a memory of a dead man and a failed parade route. It is again what he wanted it to be, only now with an added layer of respect, sharp enough to draw blood. By now, you can see the problem plainly enough. The ark was never the problem. People were, especially when they got excited and sloppy at the same time. So preparations begin again. This time the mood is different. Still joyful, yes, but tightened, controlled, more careful. You can sense people checking themselves. Hands are steadier, voices lower around the edges. Somewhere, probably, a priest is repeating procedures with the thin, strained energy of a man who would very much like nobody else to die during transport. A reasonable goal. The carriers take their places. Not a cart now. Not wheels rattling over stones like somebody delivering sacks of grain. Men bear the ark properly. Poles on shoulders. Weight distributed through flesh and bone the way it should be. The old hard way. The way that reminds everybody this is not convenience cargo. It is holy burden. The procession moves. 6 steps. That is all they take before stopping to sacrifice. 6 steps and halt. Ox and fattened animal offered. Blood, smoke, heat. Priests working fast and carefully. You stand there with the smell of fresh sacrifice pouring into the air, thick and metallic and greasy, and you understand immediately that no one plans to breeze through this day. Every movement is deliberate now. Every yard is paid for. 6 steps and sacrifice. You could call it excessive. You could also call it a group of people who have looked directly at the consequences of being casual and decided they would rather not repeat the experience. Then the procession continues toward Jerusalem. Now the city wakes up to it. You hear it before you see the whole thing. Trumpets, singing, rhythmic shouting, the deep pulse of collective excitement rolling through gates and lanes and rooftops. Jerusalem is alive, packed tight with stone houses, stairways, courtyards, people leaning out to see what all the noise is, children darting under elbows, old women squinting from shaded doorways, merchants abandoning any pretense of work because the king is bringing the ark in. And there goes the entire afternoon. Dust lifts in golden sheets under the crowd. The city smells like baking bread, packed humanity, donkey dung, olive oil, sweat-soaked wool, and fresh sacrifice drifting in from the route. It is the smell of celebration, with no modern sanitation and very limited personal boundaries. Personal space is a myth. Privacy is a rumor. Everybody is in everybody else's way, and somehow that only adds to the electricity of it. David is out in front wearing a linen ephod, which is not royal armor, not full kingly display, not a heavy robe loaded with status and stiffness. Linen, light enough to move in, plain enough to look almost scandalously informal for a king in public. And David is dancing before the Lord with all his might. Not tasteful little nodding, not dignified statesman swaying, dancing, leaping, whirling, throwing himself into joy with the kind of physical abandon that makes half the crowd ecstatic and the other half deeply uncomfortable on principle. You can see dust sticking to his legs. Sweat darkens the fabric. The musicians pound out rhythm. Voices rise. Men shout. Women sing. Somebody loses a sandal. Nobody stops. The ark comes up with shouting and with the sound of the horn. And still the danger has not left it. That is what makes the whole thing so strange. This is not uncomplicated happiness. You cannot separate the joy from the memory of Uzzah in the dust, or Beth Shemesh in mourning, or Philistine, cities learning to fear a cart from a distance. The ark moves forward in a cloud of praise and caution together. It is loved without being tamed, welcomed without being made safe. You feel that tension in every shout, every sacrifice, every careful step. You feel it in the sacrifices, in the spacing of the carriers, in the way people celebrate hard but still watch carefully. The ark is not a mascot for national pride. It is not a lucky charm finally being installed in the capital. It is a holy presence entering a city full of ordinary people with dirty hands, loud opinions, and roofs that leak in winter. That city is thrilled. That city is also right to be nervous. As the procession passes houses and terraces, one pair of eyes catches the scene from above. Michal, daughter of Saul, looks out the window and sees David leaping and dancing before the Lord. What she sees is not devotion. What she sees is exposure, impropriety, a king acting, in her view, like a man who has forgotten he is being watched, which he very much is. The parade goes on anyway. The ark is brought into the tent David has pitched for it. Not the old tabernacle arrangement in all its wilderness complexity, but a tent prepared in Jerusalem, a place made ready. Burnt offerings are offered, peace offerings too. The rituals stack one after another, smoke climbing, fat crackling in the heat, priests moving in and out of that sharp animal smell while the crowd sways between awe and exhaustion. Then David blesses the people in the name of the Lord of hosts. And because this is one of the few moments in ancient public life when leadership includes catering, he distributes food to all the people, men and women alike. A loaf of bread, a portion of meat, a cake of raisins. You take yours in both hands, and it feels like the most practical form of celebration imaginable. Not abstract joy, actual carbohydrates, after all that music and dust and adrenaline. Bread is a mercy, so the people depart, each to his house. Jerusalem settles by degrees, the shouting thins, musicians stop, animals snort in their pens, evening smoke rises from cook fires, sandals scrape home over worn stone. You still hear scraps of the day retold in every lane. Did you see the ark? Did you see the king dance? Did you hear about the sacrifices? Did you smell the smoke from halfway across the city? Of course you did. Everyone did. The whole place has been rattled by holiness and spectacle at once. But inside David's own house, the celebration curdles again. He goes to bless his household, and Michal comes out to meet him with contempt sharpened to a point. The king of Israel honored himself today, she says, uncovering himself before the eyes of servant girls, like one of the vulgar fellows shamelessly uncovers himself. It lands like a bucket of cold water thrown on a fire still trying to burn. You can almost feel the room tighten. David answers that he danced before the Lord, the one who chose him above her father and all his house. The reply is not gentle. This marriage already has cracks in it, wide enough for weather to come through. And now the ark has arrived in Jerusalem, carrying, along with all its glory and danger, one more fracture inside the king's own home. Even in triumph, nothing around this object stays simple. That is the thing you learn, standing in the dust of this section of the road. The ark never travels alone. It brings awe, death, blessing, songs, fear, arguments, processions, sacrifices, and at least one absolutely disastrous transportation choice. It can wreck a parade and sanctify a city in the same broad daylight. It can make a king dance like a madman and a household split over the sight of it. By nightfall, Jerusalem has the ark. At last, the city has what David longed to bring there. The holy object is inside its tent. The horns are quiet now. The carriers have set down their burden. The smoke of offerings hangs in the air and then thins into darkness. People sleep with the story still hot in their mouths. But nobody with any sense thinks the ark has become manageable. It is in the city now, yes, still untamable, still heavy with the old danger, still the kind of presence that blesses on its own terms and breaks your plans when you forget whose presence it is. And up on Zion, under canvas and guarded distance, the gold-covered box rests where the songs finally brought it, while the city around it keeps breathing, arguing, cooking, sleeping, and wondering what it means to live this close to something nobody can control. At last, the box gets a proper address. Thick walls, gold everywhere, and a room so restricted it might as well be a secret. You feel the change before you even see the finished place. Jerusalem has had tents, rough stone, patched roofs, donkey traffic, shouting markets, and that constant civic perfume of smoke, sweat, and animal opinion. But now work crews have been at it for years. Stone is cut true. Cedar arrives from Lebanon smelling rich and sharp, like a forest somehow wandered into a city and got hired by the crown. Gold flashes in sunlight. Bronze fittings gleam. Men haul timber, chip stone, bark orders, wipe dust from their faces, and keep building because Solomon is not aiming for good enough. He is aiming for the kind of building that makes people stop mid-argument and stare. And they do. You come up toward the Temple Mount with everyone else, craning your neck. The place rises above the city, like confidence made architectural. Huge stones, cedar beams, gold worked, into surfaces that already looked expensive before someone decided they also needed to blind you at noon. The whole thing says permanence in a voice loud enough to drown out common sense. After all those years of tents and processions and temporary arrangements, this feels like the moment the ark finally gets upgraded from wilderness trauma to royal housing. A dangerous thought, but a tempting one. The courts fill early. Priests move in white linen. Levites sing. Trumpets blast hard enough to rattle your ribs. Incense climbs in blue-grey threads, sweet and thick, fighting for dominance with the sharper smell of slaughtered offerings. It almost wins. Almost. Animal blood has a way of insisting on itself. Hot fat hits flame. Smoke rolls. You get cedar, incense, oil, ash, roasting meat, old stone warming in the sun, and the dense body heat of a crowd pressed shoulder to shoulder. It is magnificent. It is also, in the most ancient and predictable way possible, kind of sticky. The ark is brought up from the city of David. That phrase sounds neat until you remember what it means in practice. More priests, more poles, more careful shoulders under sacred weight, more nerves hidden under ceremonial faces, You hear the metal rings touch the poles with that little clink that has followed this object through deserts, disasters, and one truly catastrophic cart-based misunderstanding. Nobody is treating it casually now. The elders are there, the heads of tribes, men with serious beards and serious expressions, trying not to look like they are one bad hand twitch away from panic. Sacrifices are offered in numbers too large for easy counting. Sheep and oxen, one after another, enough that the whole area smells like a butcher shop caught fire beside a perfume stall. You stand in the crowd watching the procession move toward the temple, and for a moment it must feel almost impossible, the same box that rattled through wilderness camps under curtains. The same one that sat in one family's house for decades like a divine live wire. The same one that made Philistine cities deeply regret their trophy choices. The same one that turned a parade into a funeral stop. Now it is going into a house built for kings and priests and permanence. No wheels, no wobbling oxen, no rooftop critics, just measured steps and breath held tight across the nation. Then the priests carry the ark into the inner sanctuary. You don't go in there. That is the whole point. You can stand in the court with the crowd and smell the incense and hear the singing and watch linen backs disappear through doorways. But the innermost room is not your field trip destination. It is the most holy place, a cube of shadow and gold behind doors and walls and layers of no entry, no peeking, no casual tourism, no just a quick look from a guy who thinks the rules are more flexible than they are. Those men tend not to last. Inside that chamber, the ark is placed beneath the wings of great cherubim, not the chubby baby angel nonsense from greeting cards. These are enormous carved guardians spreading over the room, wing to wing, looming over the sacred space with the energy of celestial security staff who have never once smiled at a visitor. Their wings overshadow the ark and its poles. And then something changes. The cloud comes. At first, it is movement in the sanctuary, a thickening, a whiteness, a density to the air. Then it fills the house so heavily that the priests cannot stand to minister. They back out because what else are they supposed to do? Keep working while the room itself goes feral. The glory of the Lord fills the temple, and all your neat ceremonies and polished plans suddenly look very small beside it. So Solomon stands there with the crowd, with the singers and the smoke, and the stunned silence settling over all that noise. The temple is dedicated. The prayers go up. Blessings are spoken. Hands are raised. Knees bend. Fire falls later on another great public occasion, and the people drop with their faces to the pavement, because when heaven answers like that, your body tends to make executive decisions without consulting your pride. And for a while, the whole thing looks settled. That is the dream, after all. A capital city, a royal house, a temple of cedar and gold, the ark hidden in its proper room at the heart of it all. No more wandering, no more emergency storage on a hill, no more awkward handoffs with the national mood swinging between devotion and absolute dread. The sacred center has walls now, massive ones. You can almost hear the country telling itself, "They're done. Finally." Which would be nice. But the strangest thing about giving the ark a permanent room is that it becomes less visible than ever. Back in the wilderness, it moved when the camp moved. Hidden, yes, but physically present in the rhythm of daily survival. In battle stories, it was disastrously public. In Kiriath Jearim, at least people knew the hill, the house, the family orbiting the problem. In David's day, it came with processions, shouting, dust, and enough noise to wake every goat in Jerusalem. Now it goes behind doors, then more doors, then curtains, then priestly restrictions, then a room so sealed off from ordinary life that most people in the kingdom will never see it again. You live in the city, and the temple is there, towering over everything. You hear the songs, you smell the offerings. You watch priests go in and out with practiced faces. You know the ark is inside, somewhere beyond the visible rituals, beyond the altar, beyond the lampstands and tables, and the ordinary holy furniture that already feels far more expensive than anything you will ever own. But inside starts to become a strange word. The ark is present by absence now. You know where it is, broadly speaking, somewhere in there, behind that wall, past that threshold. In the dark chamber, no one enters casually, and almost no one enters at all. The object that once travelled in plain terror through camps and roads is now still, concealed, and increasingly unreachable. It has not become less holy, it has become less available. That changes the feeling. You come up for festivals, crowds swell, lambs bleat, sandals scrape stone. Pilgrims arrive dusty, sunburned, carrying children, baskets, and opinions. Merchants shout. Priests manage flow like overworked event staff, handling the world's most intense religious conference, except without ropes, badges, or functioning sanitation. You worship, you watch, you listen. But the ark itself remains out of sight. You hear older people talk about it. Not often, never lightly. But it happens. A grandfather who remembers stories from his father about the tent years. A priest who once saw the poles from a distance during some solemn duty. A royal official speaking carefully, as if too much familiarity with the subject might itself be hazardous. The ark begins to gather the quality all hidden things gather. The less people see it, the more the imagination starts decorating the darkness around it. And that darkness is substantial. The inner chamber has no windows, no helpful shaft of afternoon sunlight, no public line moving through with pamphlets and whispered commentary. It is a room for mystery, for dread, for concentration. Gold-covered walls, holy silence, air heavy with incense from elsewhere. The ark resting under overshadowing wings in a place where almost nobody's feet go. You picture it in there. Everybody does. You imagine the gold dimly glinting in lamplight, though nobody just strolls in with a lamp for atmosphere. You imagine the poles still there, extended enough that their ends can be sensed from the holy place. A physical reminder that the thing was made to move, even if now it does not. You imagine dust trying its best and being somehow rebuked by the room itself. The ark has gone from dangerous travel companion to sacred rumor with a fixed address, and the kingdom goes on around it. Solomon's court grows richer, trade expands, horses arrive, chariots gleam. Foreign visitors come to marvel at wealth, wisdom, and a building program fueled by ambition and excellent cedar connections. The palace complex spreads, officials bustle, scribes scratch away on tablets and scrolls, kitchens roar, dripping fat spits into fire, laundry flaps from servants' quarters. Somewhere behind all the luxury, somebody is still cleaning up after animals, hauling water, and trying not to die of an infected splinter. Royal splendor never removes basic human inconvenience. It just adds more gold nearby. For a while, confidence runs high. Too high, probably. Because once you have a temple on the hill and the ark in the back room, It is very easy to start feeling secured by architecture. You look at the stones and think, who could touch this? You look at the rituals and think, surely this is stable now. You look at the hidden center and think, we have contained the uncontainable inside cedar, gold, and proper scheduling. That mood does not age well. Solomon dies. The kingdom cracks. And not in some tidy administrative way where everyone signs papers and agrees to disagree. It splits with all the human pettiness, wounded pride, and bad leadership choices you would expect from a royal family with too much power and not enough humility. North and South pull apart. Alliances wobble. Taxes still need collecting. Troops still need feeding. Border tensions simmer. People keep living ordinary lives under rulers who all seem convinced history is a horse. They personally know how to ride. The Ark stays hidden in the temple, out of sight while the map starts misbehaving. That is one of the eeriest parts. Once, the Ark seemed to move at the center of national crisis. Now crisis moves outside while the Ark sits in darkness behind walls. Armies gather, kings posture, prophets thunder. Idols creep into places they should not be. Reforms come and go depending on who is wearing the crown and how many bad ideas they married into. And in the inner chamber, the box remains where it was placed, at least as far as anyone knows. You live long enough and the temple changes around your memory. One king repairs, another neglects, another raids the treasuries because invaders are pressing, and apparently the emergency plan is melt the National Glory Fund. Gold that once seemed untouchable gets stripped from doors. Temple wealth goes missing in installments. Foreign powers lean in harder. Tribute leaves the city in humiliating quantities. The smell of fear becomes familiar. Still, the Ark is not publicly displayed. It is too holy for that, too dangerous, too central. Also, by now, too hidden. Generations pass, and very few people can say anything firsthand. The annual approach to the inner room narrows down to the high priest, and even that is wrapped in ritual caution so severe it feels like handling lightning by appointment. One day a year, one man, blood carried in, incense clouding the space, every gesture loaded. You are outside, always outside. That distance matters. It changes the Ark from object to axis. You no longer relate to it as something moving through camp dust. You relate to it as the sealed center of a system, the invisible heart behind sacrifice and prayer and national hope. It is there, and because it is there, everything else arranges itself around that fact. Until people start wondering. Not openly, not at first. Just little shifts in tone. More rumor than statement. The kind of question that appears when a thing is too hidden for too long and the world around it is getting worse. Has anyone seen it? Truly seen it? Not the room, not the doors, the Ark. Is it exactly where it was? Are the poles still there? Does the chamber still hold what everyone assumes it holds? Nobody asks this loudly in a crowded court unless they enjoy becoming the center of a very unpleasant conversation. But the thought exists. It grows best in bad years. Bad years make everything weird. Crops fail. Kings panic. Armies march. Storehouses run low. Men who usually sound sure of themselves start speaking in clipped, tired phrases. Watchmen on the walls look too often toward the horizon. Mothers stretch grain farther than grain was designed to stretch. Priests continue the routines because routine is one of the few things standing between a civilization and full public unraveling. The temple services continue: morning offerings, evening offerings, incense, song, blessing, clean the vessels, trim the lamps, wash, carry, burn, repeat. Sacred labor keeps the machine moving, while outside the machine, history is coming apart at the seams. And behind the innermost doors, hidden from all but one trembling pair of feet each year, rests the object everybody believes anchors the whole arrangement. Imagine what that does to a people. The ark becomes both comfort and ache. Comfort, because it means the center has not vanished. The Holy One has not been reduced to the chaos of politics and siege reports and one king's particularly stupid alliance. There is still a place. There is still a room. There is still the box beneath the wings in the dark. Ache, because you cannot go there. You cannot check. You cannot reassure yourself with a glance. You cannot walk in and say, yes, there it is, exactly as our fathers described it. Faith in hidden things was always part of the deal, but hidden things get heavier when empires start circling your walls. And now they are circling. First one giant empire, then another. Assyria with its appetite, Egypt meddling, Babylon rising with that slow, dreadful certainty of a storm front you keep hoping will turn. News comes in dirty and exhausted. Cities fall. Vassals rebel. Punishments come fast. Refugees bring stories no one wants with supper. Burned gates, broken walls, captives led away. Fields trampled flat. The smell of siege camps. The sound of ram heads hitting timber. Jerusalem hears all of it. The temple still stands high above the city, splendid even in strain. Pilgrims still come when they can. Priests still perform. But the mood is changing. Royal confidence has developed cracks. Gold does not look the same when people are discussing tribute. Cedar smells less eternal when foreign soldiers are within marching distance, and the ark remains out of sight. That hiddenness starts to feel different now than it did in Solomon's bright beginning. At first it was majesty, sacred reserve, proper distance. The holy center enthroned beyond mortal reach. Now it is secrecy mixed with dread. Because when danger closes in, every hidden thing becomes a question mark. You can feel it in the whispered conversations near outer courts, in the quick glances among priests, in the way officials move with bundles and sealed instructions. Nobody wants to say the worst possibilities aloud. Nobody wants to imagine the temple breached, the rooms entered by foreign hands, the sacred furnishings exposed to men who think in terms of plunder and inventory. But people imagine it anyway. How could they not? The ark has always drawn danger around itself, like storms around a hilltop. Now the danger is not one curious farmer or one overeager transporter. It is imperial machinery, siege ramps, fire, starvation, looting on an industrial scale. Men who can empty a palace by category before lunch and set the leftovers burning by evening. And somewhere behind the doors is the old gold-covered box. The one no one touches. The one almost no one sees. The one that used to travel under the sky and now sits in a chamber so hidden that its very invisibility starts breeding legends while it is still in the building. Some nights, the city is quiet enough that you can stand in the dark and look toward the Temple Mount and feel both proud and sick. The moon catches stone. A watchfire flickers. Wind moves over roofs and through alleys that smell of dust, old smoke, urine, baking bread gone stale, and drains that were never winning any awards to begin with. Families sleep packed together. Dogs bark once and stop. Somewhere a baby starts crying. Somewhere a man coughs the deep, ugly cough of lungs that have known too much smoke and too many winters. Above it all, the temple waits. And inside that temple, behind courts and doors and priestly restrictions, the ark waits too. Or so everyone says. That is where the shadow begins to thicken. Because the less visible the ark becomes, the easier it is for fear to move in around its edges. Maybe it is there exactly as before, untouchable in the dark. Maybe only a handful of priests know more than they are saying. Maybe your plans are already being whispered in side chambers by men with tight mouths and no sleep. Maybe the old box that once crossed deserts and battle lines is about to move again, not in song this time, but in secrecy. You do not know yet. All you know is that the room has gone from sanctuary to suspense. The sacred center of the nation is now hidden at the center of a nation in trouble. Once the ark was dangerous because it was too near. Now it becomes dangerous because it is too far away, too concealed, too bound up with everything that could be lost at once. Kingdom, temple, city, memory. All of it feels packed together behind those inner doors. Outside, enemies gather. Inside, incense still burns. And in the dark, where almost nobody ever looks, the ark sits, under overshadowing wings, while rumors begin to form like mold in a damp corner. Slow, stubborn, and very hard to get rid of once they start. And now we arrive at the part nobody can describe with confidence, because siege smoke is rolling over the walls. You wake hungry, not dramatic poet hungry, not I could really go for a snack hungry, real siege hungry, where your stomach has stopped politely requesting food and moved on to folding itself inward like a bitter little fist. The grain jar is low. The oil is low. Everybody keeps lifting lids as though doing it one more time will magically produce barley from thin air. It does not. The city feels tighter now. Streets that used to smell like baking bread, animal dung, lamp smoke, and fish brine now carry a leaner, meaner scent. Less food, more ash, more fear sweat, more cooking pots with almost nothing in them except water, herbs, and optimism, which, as it turns out, is not very filling. You step outside and look toward the walls. Smoke on the horizon again. Not close enough to burn your beard off yet, but close enough to sit on the skyline like a threat that has rented. Property and plans to stay. Messengers come and go with dust in their eyelashes and bad news tucked under their tongues. Men speak in lowered voices. Women trade rumors while grinding the last useful kernels from sacks that feel mostly decorative now. The city is still functioning. That is almost the worst part. Vendors still try to sell things in the markets, though the stalls look sad and half-plucked. Priests still move toward the temple. Officials still bark instructions. Somebody is still arguing over a donkey. Human beings can continue an astonishing amount of ordinary nonsense while standing ankle-deep in disaster. But the mood has changed. You can feel it in the way people glance uphill toward the temple and then away again. Too quickly. The place still shines when the light hits it. Stone, cedar, gold. But now it looks less like permanence and more like a very expensive item you forgot to move before the flood. And inside, behind all those guarded layers, sits the problem no one can solve in public. The Ark. You do not hear that word shouted. Nobody is standing in the square yelling, "Quick! What's the evacuation plan for the sacred death box?" people prefer to keep their voices down when discussing an object associated with holiness, wrath, and several memorable examples of what happens when procedures get creative. Still, the thought is in the air, moving from mouth to mouth like bad breath. What happens if the city falls? You are not supposed to ask that loudly. You ask it anyway, quietly, to yourself, to a cousin, to a neighbor who shrugs and says he heard the priests have arrangements. Then he looks over his shoulder, as if even repeating that much might earn him a lightning-related correction from heaven. Arrangements. That word starts doing a lot of work. You picture back rooms, whispering, temple officials with exhausted eyes and tightly tied belts, carrying keys, seals, bundles, maybe ropes, maybe wrappings, maybe plans scribbled and hidden under folds of linen. You picture men trying to look calm while absolutely not being calm. The ancient equivalent of people pretending a crisis is manageable while carrying boxes at midnight. The temple is full of valuables besides the ark, of course. Bowls, lampstands, tables, utensils, gold everywhere, because apparently if you are building a house for the Lord, restraint is for other nations. The place glitters with objects that any invading empire would happily classify under ours now. So people begin moving things. You hear of silver disappearing from one room, bronze from another, treasury items counted, sealed, shifted, perhaps hidden, perhaps surrendered, perhaps already gone. The practical panic has started. And now you begin to understand how the great silence around the ark could happen at all. Sieges are not tidy. They do not come with clipboards and a nice, clean inventory process. Nobody pauses the invasion so an official can stand in good lighting and announce, "For future generations, the following sacred object is now being relocated to a cave system west of the city." That is not how collapsing kingdoms behave. They behave like frightened households, trying to save the baby, the bread, the blanket, and whatever can still be carried before the door comes off its hinges. The city tightens further. Water matters more. Grain matters more. Firewood matters more. Tempers get shorter. Faces get sharper. Even the temple courts feel strained now. Pilgrims are fewer. Local worshippers come with eyes ringed dark from bad sleep. The incense still rises, sweet and thick, but underneath it you catch the smell of unwashed wool, stale breath, anxious bodies, and the metallic tang of fear that seems to climb into your nose and settle there. You watch priests at work. Usually they move with that temple confidence, all procedure and training, and please do not improvise near the holy things. Now some of them still have it, but others look distracted. One carries a basin and nearly clips a doorway. Another pauses too long after speaking with an official. A third disappears into an inner area with two others and comes back empty-handed and sweaty, though the morning is not yet that hot. Maybe it means nothing. Maybe it means everything. That is the agony of this part. The city is full of half-seen motions, doors opening at strange times, packages wrapped in plain cloth, men who are not usually allowed near certain chambers suddenly passing through on urgent business. The Temple Hill becomes the center of both devotion and speculation, which is never a relaxing combination. And the rumors begin breeding in earnest. One rumor says the priests have already hidden the ark under the temple itself. That one spreads because it feels plausible. Big building, deep foundations, secret chambers, restricted access. Very good atmosphere for conspiracy. You picture a stone slab lifted in the night, a stairway descending into stale underground air, torch smoke smearing the ceiling black, a handful of priests carrying the ark by poles through a tunnel too narrow for comfort, sandals slipping in dust, everyone whispering through clenched teeth, because dropping this thing in a basement would be the worst team-building exercise in human history. You can almost hear the rings clink. Another rumor says it has been wrapped and taken out before dawn. Not through the main courts, obviously. Nobody wants a farewell parade. More like a quiet transfer through side passages and storage areas. Then beyond the city with trusted men who know the roads and keep their mouths shut. You imagine the bundle looking disappointingly ordinary beneath layers of cloth. That is how precious things travel when everybody is trying not to die. No dramatic sparkle, no visible cherubim, just a shape under wrappings, moving like contraband under the nose of an empire. Where would they take it? That is where the guesses get wilder. East, someone says, into the wilderness. No, south, toward harsher country where only goats and prophets enjoy living. No, into caves in the hills. People love a cave in a crisis. A cave feels responsible, hidden, ancient, naturally cool. Also full of bats, damp stone, loose rubble, and the droppings of every creature that got there first. You crawl into enough Judean caves, and you start realizing secret sacred storage sounds grander than the actual experience, which is mostly stooping in the dark while your shins meet rock and your nose meets old animal filth. Still, caves have advantages. You can hide men in caves, grain in caves, weapons in caves. Why not the ark? So now you picture a small group moving at night along goat paths, every sound too loud. Sandals scraping chalky stone. A wrapped burden on shoulders. Cold air in the ravines. One man hissing at another to watch his footing. Somewhere nearby, a jackal complaining to the moon like an underpaid employee. They reach a cave mouth covered by scrub and shadow, then go inside with a lamp that smells of hot oil and soot. The chamber deepens. The air gets stale. Your skin feels clammy. The walls sweat. Bats mutter overhead. The men go farther, because if you are hiding the ark from Babylon, you do not stop at the first conveniently spooky niche near the entrance. You keep going until the light behind you shrinks. Your feet slide on dust and old pellets, and everybody is one bad step from dropping the holiest object in the nation into a pile of limestone rubble. Then perhaps they place it in the dark, cover it, seal the entrance, mark the spot somehow. Or maybe they do not mark it at all, because a mark is just an invitation for the wrong person to start digging. That possibility clings to people because it feels exactly like the kind of desperate brilliance human beings come up with when the walls are closing in. But the walls are still closing in. Days pass, nothing improves. The Babylonian pressure is not theatrical. It is patient, ugly, logistical. Camps outside, lines tightened, food dwindling inside. Men on the walls peering through heat and smoke. A city listening for impact. Siege warfare is mostly waiting, starving, and praying your enemy gets bored before you do. They do not. Inside Jerusalem, prayers multiply. You hear them in houses, in alleys, in the temple courts. Loud ones, weeping ones, muttered ones. Bargaining prayers, furious prayers. Prayers from men who ignored every warning for 20 years and now suddenly want premium access to divine mercy. People bring what offerings they can. Priests continue, though even piety starts looking thin when your lunch is half a fig and a memory. And in the middle of all this, no public Word about the ark. That silence becomes deafening. If it is still in the inner chamber, then people are trusting the city to hold. If it has been moved, then someone chose secrecy over reassurance. You can understand both. Neither feels good. Maybe only a handful know. Maybe the high priest. Maybe a few senior priests. Maybe one royal official whose face has gone so pale that he looks like he was carved from old dough. Maybe even they are arguing. Leave it. Move it. Trust the Lord. Use the tunnel. There is no tunnel. There is absolutely a tunnel. Whose cousin told you that? Why are cousins always involved in the least reliable intelligence? You can imagine the room where such arguments happen. Low lamplight, hot walls, scrolls pushed aside, men talking too fast and then stopping because the thing under discussion is not a chest of tax silver. It is the ark, the box at the center of the nation's memory. The object connected with wilderness fire, battle panic, royal processions, temple, glory. Try making a calm storage plan for that while Babylon is breathing down your neck. Someone says, leave it in the sanctuary. Let the Lord defend his own house. Someone else says, that sounds noble right up until foreign soldiers kick in the doors. Someone says, move it and preserve it. Someone else says, move it where, exactly, and with which clean hands, and under whose authority. And do you personally want to be remembered as the priest who turned the most holy place into a moving day catastrophe? No answer feels safe. That, more than anything, makes the mystery believable. There may not have been one obvious right move, only terrifying options with different flavors of regret. And still another possibility nags at you. Maybe Babylon took it. Empires are very good at taking things. They have carts, lists, labor crews, officers with hard eyes. They strip palaces, temples, treasuries. Gold is gold to a conquering army, whether it adorned a cup, a wall, or the most sacred object in a defeated kingdom. You know this. Everybody knows this. The city has seen temple wealth carried off before in humiliating installments. So perhaps the ark stayed where it was until the end. Perhaps the doors were breached, chambers entered, the inner room exposed to smoke, shouting, boots and hands that did not care what had happened to Uzzah. Foreign soldiers are not generally known for pausing to review Israel's holiness code. They pry, seize, smash, strip, stack. Maybe they found it beneath the wings, gold glinting in torchlight through dust and smoke, and all they saw was transportable wealth with decorative angels. It is a sickening thought. You imagine the sound of wood splintering somewhere in the complex, men shouting in Akkadian, bronze clanging, fire catching cedar beams and turning rich old timber into a roaring furnace. The temple's sweet smells are gone now, replaced by pitch, hot metal, ash, blood, and that hideous smell of burning architecture, dry and choking, like the city itself is being cooked alive. In that chaos, what happens to one's sacred box? It could be hauled off, it could be broken open, it could be melted for its gold. It could vanish into the anonymous stomach of empire, where treasures from a dozen conquered peoples pile up together under dust, labels, and indifference. One more item in a king's inventory. One more holy thing made common by violence. That possibility hurts because it is so ordinary, not miraculous, not romantic, just loss. A city falls. Sacred objects get smashed or seized. Survivors do not always get explanatory notes. But there is another possibility, quieter and somehow sadder. Maybe it was destroyed in the confusion, and nobody could say exactly how. Fire does not care that your furniture is holy. Collapsing stone does not pause for liturgical significance. If the temple burned hot enough, if beams fell, if the chamber was breached and chaos took over, then the ark could have been damaged, buried, consumed, or rendered unrecognizable in the ruin. Not carried into legend in one dramatic instant. Just wrecked amid smoke, splinters, shattered gold, and screaming. History can be insultingly messy like that. You want a trumpet blast, a witness, a neat final sentence. Instead, you get panic, fire, and survivors too traumatized to provide premium documentation. By now the city is in full misery. Children cry from hunger. People fight over scraps. The wells are guarded. The streets are dirtier because siege does wonderful things for sanitation, and by wonderful, I mean absolutely vile. Chamber pots empty where they should not. Refuse piles up. Flies arrive with the enthusiasm of invited guests who misunderstood the tone. The air in narrow lanes becomes a blend of human waste, wood smoke, and despair. Jerusalem is not glowing with holy confidence anymore. It is enduring. That word matters, because in this kind of suffering, memory itself starts changing shape. People stop thinking in polished terms and start thinking in fragments. Who has food? Which gate still holds? Whether the temple vessels are safe? Whether the priests moved something important? Whether old stories about hidden chambers were true after all? In disaster, rumor is not just gossip. It is a survival tool, a painkiller, and occasionally complete nonsense wearing sandals. Then the breach comes. Maybe you hear it before you understand it. A new roar in the city, a wave of shouting, running feet. That sickening change in crowd noise when fear stops being theoretical and becomes directional. People surge, doors slam, soldiers scramble. Someone yells that the wall is taken. Someone else says not yet. Someone else is already bleeding and no longer participating in the debate. Then fire. Then all the things cities do when they die. You run through smoke that claws your throat. Sparks swirl in the air. Roof beams crack. Donkeys scream like they are being murdered, because in many cases they are. Somewhere pottery shatters. Somewhere a woman is calling for a child. Somewhere treasure is becoming loot. Somewhere old men are collapsing from heat and terror. The whole city sounds like a market, a battlefield, and a funeral pyre all trying to speak at once. And above that chaos rises the Temple Mount, the place you always thought would remain, the place with the hidden room, the place with the ark, unless it was moved, unless it was taken, unless it was hidden, unless it was already gone, unless. You are not getting answers today. Nobody is. Survival swallows explanation whole. Later, after the smoke, after the chains, after the march, after the city is rubble and memory hurts to touch, people will begin asking what became of it. Not as a hobby, not as a treasure hunt with exciting maps and overconfident men waving at hillsides. They will ask, because losing the city was one wound, losing the temple another, and losing the ark without a clean ending is a wound that never forms a proper scar. So stories begin. A priest carried it away. Several priests carried it away. It was hidden beneath the temple before the Babylonians entered. It was taken to a cave on a mountain and sealed. It was sent across the Jordan. It was removed in the days before the final siege. It was captured and carted east with the other plunder. It was burned. It was buried. It was concealed so well that only a few men knew, and those men died with the road still in their heads. That last possibility is maybe the most haunting of all. Imagine being one of them. You know the path. You know the ravine, the turn, the rock face, the chamber. You know which tree leaned over the entrance and which narrow ledge nearly sent Eliashib sliding into a thorn bush while everybody silently hated him. You know exactly where the ark was left. Then the city falls. You are killed or captured or dragged to Babylon with the map still trapped behind your teeth. And that is it. Not because the place was impossible to find, because memory failed at the worst possible moment. That kind of loss feels human, horribly human, not a grand cosmic riddle, just too much death, too much fear, too few surviving witnesses, and one sacred object swallowed by catastrophe. Years later, people will stand among ruins and try to piece it together. They will look at blackened stones and broken courts and imagine secret removals in the night. They will remember older priests who said odd things. They will repeat stories heard from grandfathers who heard them from men who once served in the temple's storerooms. They will point to caves, to tunnels, to missing inventories, to the suspicious fact that some treasures are listed later and some are not. The ark's absence will become its own presence. You can feel that beginning already, right here in the smoke. Because once something vanishes under pressure like this, certainty does not return. It fragments. One family keeps one version, another swears by another. A priest in exile remembers a hurried conversation. A survivor of the fire remembers seeing men carry a long-wrapped object and can never prove what it was. Someone else insists, no, impossible. It remained in the chamber until the end. Nobody can drag the answer back out of the flames. So the mystery survives because the city did not. That is the ugly little engine under all of it. A hidden object in a stable world might eventually be checked, recorded, displayed, discussed. A hidden object in a collapsing kingdom disappears into smoke, blood, rubble, exile, and broken memory. All the conditions for confusion arrive at once and move in like terrible house guests. Fire, hunger, secrecy, death, plunder, trauma. None of them are known for excellent record-keeping. And somewhere in the middle of that, the ark is lost from sight. Maybe under stone, maybe under ash, maybe in a cave where the air still tastes of dust and bats, maybe on a foreign cart headed east under armed guard, maybe hidden so carefully that the hiding itself became a tomb. By the time the smoke thins, all you have left is absence and the smell of burned cedar hanging over everything. It settles into clothes, into hair, into memory. The city is broken. The temple is broken. The room behind the doors is broken open or empty or collapsed or unreachable. Nobody can walk you in and point. Nobody can say with clean confidence, there, this is what happened. Here is where it went. This is the exact day the trail ended. Only smoke, only loss, only people carrying scraps of memory like coals in their hands, trying not to let them die. And that is how the ark slips from history into rumor. Not with a final trumpet, with a siege, with hunger, with whispered plans, with things hidden in haste and things taken by force, and things burned so badly no one can separate them afterward. With frightened priests, exhausted officials, desperate families, and a city too busy dying to preserve neat explanations. By morning, the old certainty is gone. By exile, it has become story. And somewhere beyond the ruins, in darkness, in plunder, or in memory alone, the trail goes cold. 3 generations pass. The answers do not improve. The city is gone. The temple is ash. And the ark is now doing what vanished sacred objects do best. It starts traveling without moving, through memory, through rumor, through the unstoppable human talent for hearing one uncertain thing and building an entire mountain expedition around it. Once the ark slips out of sight, it never stops moving through people's imaginations. You are no longer standing in burning Jerusalem. Now you are among exiles, old men with ruined eyes, children born far from Zion, priests who remember the smell of incense, but not the exact layout of every chamber. People sit in foreign dust and talk low. They speak of the temple the way displaced people always speak of home, with too much detail in some places and strange blanks in others. And always, eventually, somebody asks about the ark. Not right away, perhaps. First come the griefs that scream louder: food, work, chains, distance, graves left behind. But after years pass, after children start asking what the temple was like, after memory hardens into story, the question rises again like a splinter under the skin. What happened to it? Where did it go? Who moved it? Who saw it last? The old men disagree immediately. Of course they do. One swears the priests hid it before the breach. Another says no, impossible. There was no time. A third insists his mother's brother served near the temple stores and heard that sacred objects were taken out by night. A fourth snorts and says everybody's mother's brother knew something miraculous right after a catastrophe, apparently. Human beings have not improved. So the first rumor grows legs. Jeremiah took it. That one has staying power because it feels exactly dramatic enough. A prophet no one listened to during the crisis, suddenly slipping away with the nation's holiest object, while everyone else is busy making terrible decisions. You can see it. Grey dawn, a narrow path. Jeremiah grim as old leather, walking with a few trusted men, carrying sacred things toward the hills, while Jerusalem behind him is all panic, smoke, and denial. No parade, no trumpets, just urgency. You follow him in your mind through the rough country east of the city, where the wind tastes dry and the rocks look like they were arranged by someone who actively dislikes ankles. Thorn bushes snag your hem. Loose stones slide under your sandals. The sun beats down by day, and by evening, the air goes cold enough to make your teeth notice. If you are sneaking a gold-covered sacred chest through this landscape, you are doing wilderness CrossFit with liturgical consequences. Then comes the cave. Naturally, there is a cave. There is always a cave. You squeeze past a low entrance that smells of dust, bat droppings, old damp stone, and that mineral coldness caves have, like the earth has been keeping secrets in a wet cellar. Your lamp spits smoke. The passage narrows. Someone behind you bumps the wall and sends pebbles skittering into darkness. Excellent. Exactly the atmosphere you want while transporting the object famous for punishing procedural sloppiness. Deeper in, the chamber opens. Maybe this is where they set the ark down. Maybe the lamp flame trembles on gold. Maybe the men are panting, shoulders burning, hands sore from the poles. Maybe Jeremiah says this place will remain unknown until God gathers his people again. Maybe everyone nods because nobody is about to volunteer to carry it back out. Then they leave it there, covered, hidden, waiting. That version of the story clings to the imagination because it gives loss a little dignity. The ark was not smashed by empire or melted for bullion like temple decor at a very violent estate sale. It was preserved, hidden by the righteous, kept safe by grief and rock and silence. A tragic ending, yes, but with storage solutions. People love that. Centuries pass, and the mountain keeps its mouth shut. Some say it was Nebo. That makes the whole thing even more dramatic. You are up on a high ridge where the wind whips your cloak sideways, and the view goes on forever in bleached folds of hills and pale distance. This is not cozy. This is not accessible. This is not the kind of place you visit casually unless you enjoy climbing, thirst, and the possibility of discovering that the phrase remote sacred cave translates in practice to cramped hole with goat smell. Pilgrims look at ridges and wonder. Monks later will look at ridges and wonder harder. Every lonely mountain starts auditioning for the role. That one over there with the split face and the dark opening halfway up? Maybe. The other with the old path and the hermit who says strange things? Definitely maybe. Human beings see one cave in a holy landscape and immediately become part-time treasure consultants. But the mountain rumor is only one branch. The temple rumor never dies either. Because once you say, hidden under the temple, people's eyes light up in a very specific way. Not reverent exactly. More like the expression of someone who has just heard there might be a secret room behind the pantry wall. Underground chambers, sealed passages, priest-only corridors, ancient stones nobody has moved for centuries. It is catnip. So now you are back on the Temple Mount in imagination, but the city around it has changed hands and changed hands again. Empires come through wearing different uniforms and the same boots. Babylon, Persia, Greeks, Seleucids, Romans, new rulers, new taxes, new soldiers standing where old priests once walked. Dust settles, walls are rebuilt, courts are repaired. Worship resumes in altered forms, but under all of that, people keep pointing downward. Beneath the paving, beneath the foundations, beneath that chamber, beneath those steps, somewhere under your feet, they whisper. Maybe the ark is still waiting in the dark, like the worst hidden heirloom in history. You picture workers uncovering some forgotten shaft. A slab shifts. Cool, stale air rises up. The smell hits first. Trapped dust, old limestone, mouse droppings, dead air that has not met daylight in generations. Someone lowers a lamp. Shadows wobble over rough-cut walls. The passage goes farther than expected, because of course it does. Ancient builders loved a narrow underground corridor the way later ages loved adding secret tunnel to absolutely every rumor. And once a tunnel is mentioned, the imagination starts doing cartwheels. Maybe priests used it during the siege. Maybe kings knew about it. Maybe only one family guarded the secret. Maybe the entrance was hidden under a chamber floor, behind a cistern, below a storeroom, under a pile of very ordinary jars no invading soldier would bother with. You can almost hear the breathless whisper of the guide. No, not this stone, the other stone, the one with the mark. There is always a mark. There is never any agreement about the mark. Meanwhile, generations pass without anyone producing the ark. That does not slow confidence down at all. In fact, confidence gets louder with every century. Now the rumors spread outward with the people. Exiles return. Traders travel. Pilgrims tell stories in one city and hear new ones in another. The ark becomes that family story everyone swears is true, even though no two uncles tell it the same way. By now, it has acquired what all durable mysteries acquire: maps, guardians, codes, and men who lower their voices right before saying something impossible. Then the story goes south, far south. You are in Ethiopia now, where the air can feel different on the skin and the light falls hard and bright. Processions move with rhythm and color. Priests carry sacred things under embroidered coverings. Drums throb. Chant rises. Incense drifts in thick curls. White garments flash in the sun. And somewhere in the center of these traditions stands a claim so bold it practically kicks the door in. The Ark is here, not was, is. You hear it said with the kind of certainty usually reserved for people announcing they know exactly where they left their keys, which is impressive enough. This is not cave speculation from a tired cousin. This is a living claim, carried in ritual, repeated in story, guarded in sacred identity. The Ark, some say, came long ago, carried from Jerusalem in the days of Solomon, or hidden away and brought south under divine direction, preserved far from invaders in a land prepared to keep it. You stand outside a chapel where nobody casual is strolling in for a peek. There is a guardian. There are rules. There is the immediate realization that access is not going to be handled like a museum gift shop. This is not step right up and photograph the lost Ark. This is more like absolutely not and back away from the holy enclosure, which, honestly, feels spiritually on brand. The processions themselves are enough to stir the blood. You hear sistrums rattle and voices rise. You smell incense, wax, packed crowds, wool, dust warmed by the sun, and bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder in celebration. Copies of the Ark, sacred and honored, move under rich cloths as people sing. Every motion says presence, memory, continuity. Even if you arrived as a skeptic, the air itself tells you this story is alive here. It has feet, it has drums, it has guardians who are very much not in the mood for your excavation permit. And so the Ethiopian claim enters the long Ark chase with stunning durability. Not because everyone agrees. They absolutely do not. But because it refuses to be merely theoretical. It lives in ritual and place and confidence, as history keeps proving, is one of the most renewable resources on Earth. Back in the lands around Jerusalem, other centuries are getting ideas. By the time you reach the medieval world, the Ark has become irresistible bait for every imagination that enjoys a relic, a hidden chamber, or a story beginning with a holy man once discovered. Monasteries collect legends the way attics collect dust. Chroniclers write things down in script so cramped you need the eyesight of an eagle and the patience of a saint. Pilgrims hear reports over supper and carry them across countries. A manuscript appears, or part of one, or someone says they saw one. The parchment smells like old leather, dry dust, mildew, and the faint sour ghost of every finger that has touched it for 300 years. It crackles when unrolled. The ink has browned. The margins are full of pious notes, corrections, and at least one aggressive scratch where a later scribe apparently disagreed with everybody. Somewhere inside is a reference to hidden temple treasures, sealed chambers, sacred vessels, a list of things buried or concealed. Immediately, everyone loses all chill. Because lists are dangerous, a list makes people think the treasure has become organized. Now men begin squinting at place names and arguing over them with the intensity of gamblers reading weather signs. Is that hill the same hill? Is that valley mistranslated? Does under the eastern gate mean under the gate, near the gate, or in some poetic sense that will waste 6 months of digging? Entire adult lives begin dissolving into these questions, and then come the Crusaders. Oh, the Crusaders. You have never seen so many armed men arrive in a holy city with such confidence and such a breathtaking willingness to misunderstand everything. Metal clanks, horses stink, leather creaks, sweat dries under chainmail, camps reek of smoke, manure, wet wool, stale wine, and men who have marched for weeks without any modern conversation about personal hygiene. They reach Jerusalem and start dreaming, not only of victory, power, and relics, but of secret knowledge, hidden temple treasures, underground chambers. The ark waiting below, perhaps, as though God had thoughtfully left a prize in the basement for whichever heavily armed foreigners solved the riddle first. It is the medieval version of buying a fixer-upper because you heard there might be gold in the walls. So stories bloom. The Templars are involved, some say. Of course they are. Give history a hidden object and a military religious order with a flair for secrecy, and rumour will do the rest before lunch. Men whisper about tunnels under the mount, night excavations, findings too dangerous to reveal, documents carried to Europe, sacred objects smuggled out in carts beneath sacks of grain, or under less glamorous cargo, because nothing says conspiracy like treasure hidden beneath turnips. You can smell the underground in these stories. Lamp smoke, damp mortar, old dust, sweat from men digging in enclosed spaces where the air gets used up fast, pick against stone, muffled commands, one fellow sneezing explosively and nearly convincing everyone they are about to die under a collapsed wall. It has all the ingredients of a perfect legend and almost none of the ingredients of a verified outcome. No matter. The stories spread anyway. That is the Ark's real miracle by now. It can survive a total lack of proof and still inspire logistical enthusiasm. Then the centuries keep stacking. Ottomans come, travellers come, antiquarians come. Local guides develop highly marketable certainty about nearby caves. This one, they say, gesturing toward a hole in the hillside full of thorns, lizards, and old goat pellets. Very ancient, very secret. You duck inside, hit your head immediately, and discover that half of the ancient world appears to have hidden important objects in places with terrible ventilation. Still, the chase continues. European explorers arrive later with notebooks, measuring rods, boots, and the intoxicating belief that they are one trench away from solving everything. Dust gets into their beards, their water goes warm, their tempers go strange in the heat. They hire workers who know the land better than they do, then proceed to ignore half their practical advice because confidence, once again, is undefeated. Every broken wall looks promising. Every cistern has potential. Every blocked passage becomes a possible clue instead of what it often is, which is a blocked passage. You climb down ladders into chambers that smell like wet rock, lamp soot and old pigeon nests. You stoop through tunnels where your shoulders brush gritty stone. You emerge covered in dust, cobwebs, and disappointment, only to hear someone say, "There is another shaft just beyond the next ridge." There is always another shaft. Then come the secret societies, the coded diagrams, the maps copied from older maps, copied from someone's uncle's confident memory. Drawings appear with X marks, arrows, Hebrew letters, stars, circles, and enough mystery flair to make common sense leave the building entirely. A man in 1 century insists the ark lies beneath a specific chamber. Another says no, it was moved farther south. A third produces a document no one else can inspect because it is hidden for safekeeping, which is a convenient arrangement for everybody except the truth. By now, the rumor has become an empire of its own. It occupies caves, churches, chapels, mountain ridges, underground vaults, monasteries, and the back shelves of private libraries. It travels by camel, by ship, by mule, by manuscript, by sermon, by campfire retelling, by men who swear they saw a sealed room with their own eyes, and by men who definitely did not, but are enjoying the attention. And still, no ark produced in broad daylight, no polished unveiling, no universally agreed location, just the eternal confidence of people who are absolutely certain they know where it is this time. You meet them in every age. One man has a map. It is stained with oil and folded to softness. He taps a corner and insists the line indicates a chamber beneath a ruined tower. He smells of travel, old wool, and garlic. Another man has a genealogy proving his family guarded the secret for 17 generations, though the actual directions become frustratingly vague right around the practical part. A monk says a certain mountain is forbidden for reasons he will not fully explain. A pilgrim claims to have heard chanting from within a sealed cavern. An explorer says local tradition points east. A local elder says the explorer asked the wrong village. Nobody lacks certainty. Evidence, yes. Certainty, never. And that, more than any single theory, becomes the true afterlife of the Ark. It turns into a shape every age can carry. For exiles, a promise that holiness was not entirely crushed. For mountain monks, a secret sleeping under stone. For imperial treasure hunters, the ultimate missing prize. For pilgrims, a destination just beyond reach. For guardians in distant chapels, a living trust. For tunnel enthusiasts, the motherlode of all underground rumors. For men with manuscripts, a puzzle. For men with shovels, a career hazard. You can spend whole lifetimes following these trails. Up ridges where the wind sandpapers your face. Down into crypts where stale air sits on your tongue. Across processions bright with song and incense. Into libraries where dust coats your cuffs. And old parchment leaves your fingers smelling faintly of mold and animal skin. Into arguments over geography, tradition, language, and whether that one phrase means hidden, stored, or buried under an inconvenient amount of rubble. The Ark remains just ahead, never completely gone, never clearly found. One century hands the mystery to the next like a family heirloom nobody can locate, but everybody discusses at dinner. Each generation adds one more rumor, one more cave, one more pious old account, one more tunnel, one more breathless claim from a man who has definitely, absolutely, finally cracked it. He has not. Another will arrive next year. Empires rise and crumble around the question. Languages change, roads shift, temples fall, churches rise, mosques gleam, libraries burn, archives scatter. Still, the Ark keeps moving through imagination, crossing borders without ever needing a passport. It survives because nobody can quite let it settle into a single ending. Hidden is more powerful than destroyed. Awaiting discovery is more exciting than inventory loss. A sacred mystery with no confirmed address can live anywhere. So it does. In a mountain cave with bat stink and dripping walls. In a buried chamber under old stones. In a guarded Ethiopian sanctuary where no visitor gets to poke around. In a crusader fantasy dug by torchlight. In a monk's chronicle. In a traveler's tale. In a tunnel map smudged by sweaty fingers. In the voice of every person who leans closer and says they know someone who knows where it really is. By now, the chase itself has become part of the object's story. The Ark once traveled through deserts, battlefields, and processions. Now, it travels through rumor, through longing, through the stubborn refusal of human beings to accept that something so charged, so feared, so central could simply vanish and stay gone. We keep giving it one more hiding place, one more guardian, one more escape route, one more chance to be waiting just beyond the last door. And somewhere in all that dust and certainty and holy guesswork, the mystery endures. So after all of that, what all of this has been pressing into you? Because once you step back from the smoke, the blood, the panic, the ox carts, the caves, the monks, the maps, and the non-stop parade of men confidently pointing at holes in hills, the shape of it starts to settle. The ark was never just a box. That is the first thing. It looked like a box. Yes, it had dimensions. It had poles. It had gold. You could, in the absolute dumbest possible version of events, mistake it for high-end liturgical furniture. But nobody around it treated it like furniture. They treated it like concentrated holiness with edges, like standing too close to lightning and trying to act casual about it. That is why the rules around it felt so severe. Not because God is fussy in the way a difficult dinner host is fussy. Not because heaven looked down and thought, you know what would be fun? More carrying regulations. It was because the ark sat at the meeting point between divine presence and ordinary human beings. And ordinary human beings are spectacularly bad at handling anything powerful without getting weird about it. You saw that from the beginning. In the wilderness, the ark moves with the camp, but not like spare cookware or rolled-up tents. Nobody tosses it on a donkey and hopes for the best. There are coverings, poles, distances, procedures, layers upon layers of do not even think about it. That whole system says something plain. God can be near, but God is not manageable. Nearness is not the same thing as control. That mattered then. It still matters. Because almost immediately people start trying to turn the ark into something easier, something useful, something predictable, a sacred machine, a guaranteed win button with cherubim on top. Drag it onto the battlefield, and surely victory will pop out like bread from an oven. That was the logic. Bad logic, but very human. And the disaster that followed makes the point with painful clarity. You cannot use divine presence like a lucky charm. You cannot wave holiness around like a military flag and expect heaven to fall in line behind your strategy. The ark in enemy hands becomes almost darkly funny for that reason. Everyone involved keeps discovering, in increasingly unpleasant ways, that this object is not loyal to anybody's stupidity, not Israel's, not Philistia's, not kings, priests, soldiers, or cart drivers having a very long day. It is holy, not obedient. There is a difference. That same lesson comes roaring back on the road to Jerusalem. The music is playing, everybody is sweating through their clothes, dust is flying, spirits are high, and for one shining moment, it feels like the sacred can finally be folded into a nice national celebration. Then a hand goes out, a man falls dead, and the whole parade freezes in its sandals. Awful, shocking, uncomfortable, also clarifying. Because even good intentions do not turn holiness into something casual. You cannot reduce the presence of God to, well, we meant well. Ancient Israel keeps learning this the hard way. Sincerity is not the same thing as reverence. Enthusiasm is not the same thing as obedience. You can dance before the ark with joy, yes, but you do not get to domesticate it. You do not get to make it safe in the way humans usually mean safe, which is controllable, familiar, and available on demand. Then the ark goes into the temple, and another shift happens. At first, that sounds like success. Permanent address, cedar beams, gold everywhere, incense thick enough to sit on. At last, the wild, wandering sacred object gets a proper room. But once it disappears behind walls and curtains, something else begins to dawn. The holiest thing in the nation is now mostly unseen. That hiddenness is the point, and you can feel it every time you stop at one more doorway you are not crossing. It is part of the meaning. The ark begins in motion, in camp life, amid dust and danger. Then it ends up in the innermost chamber, out of sight, inaccessible, no longer available to public gaze. That change says God's presence is real, whether or not you can see it. In fact, some of the deepest holiness in Israel's life is happening where almost nobody gets to look. That would become very important later, because people were going to lose the building, lose the city, lose the rituals they depended on, and they would need to know that hidden did not mean gone. That is where the disappearance stops feeling like a missing object problem and starts pressing on your chest. Because yes, on the surface, it is frustrating. Everybody wants the warehouse inventory. Where was it last seen? Who signed for it? Which cave, which tunnel, which chapel, which mountain? Human beings love a solved mystery. We want labels. We want a map with a big red circle and a helpful footnote. Instead, the ark vanishes. And strangely, that vanishing becomes part of the teaching. Because once the ark is gone, people are forced to confront something they may have resisted all along. God's presence was never trapped inside a single object, however holy that object was. The ark mattered deeply. It was precious. It was terrifying. It stood at the center of worship and memory. But it was never a leash on God. Lose the ark, and God is not lost. Burn the temple, and heaven has not been evicted. That is why later generations could keep talking about it without the whole faith collapsing into rubble. The object disappeared. The meaning did not. And that is a mercy, honestly. Because people are collectors by instinct. We want relics, coordinates, proof, access, possession. We want to say, there it is, behind that door, under that cloth, in that chamber, guarded by that person, available to our side and not theirs. The ark story keeps frustrating that impulse. It keeps saying no. No, you do not own the holy. No, you do not weaponize it. No, you do not reduce it to a national mascot, a magical device, or a trophy for the right empire. No cave expedition gets to fix that. No triumphal parade fixes it either. Even the rumors, for all their chaos, ended up carrying a kind of truth. Not in the sense that every mountain story was correct. Clearly not. Some of those theories have the energy of a man finding one old tunnel and immediately becoming unbearable at dinner. But the persistence of the search tells you something real. People could not let the ark become mere scrap history, because it had come to represent the nearness of a God who had acted among them and yet refused to be pinned down. So the longing stayed alive. Not because everybody needed a box, because everybody needed to remember what the box had pointed to. And that is where all the story beats come together. The danger around the ark taught that God is holy. The battlefield disaster taught that God is not a tool. The dead man on the road taught that reverence is not optional. The temple hiddenness taught that unseen does not mean absent. The disappearance taught that loss does not cancel presence. And the centuries of rumor taught that humans will keep reaching toward the holy even when the address is gone. That is a very old comfort, not a shiny comfort, not the kind that ties everything up with a cheerful ribbon and sends you home with answers laminated and indexed. More the comfort of knowing what was always true underneath the noise. God was never the sort of presence you could lock in a room, haul into battle, or unveil for applause. Holy presence is gift, not possession. So by the end, the missing ark is doing one last thing for the people who remember it. It is teaching them to stop confusing the sign with the one the sign was about. That is the closure in all this. The ark mattered, and its loss was real. The grief was real. The mystery remained. But the ancient memory did not preserve this story, so people could spend forever crawling through bat-infested caves with terrible maps and overconfidence. It preserved the story so people would remember that God had drawn near, that this nearness was fearsome and good, and that no disaster, theft, empire, or silence could finally seize control of it. So the search can quiet now, not because the mystery is solved in the way treasure hunters want, but because the meaning is already in your hands. The ark's whole journey kept saying the same thing, from desert camp to temple chamber to rumor-filled absence. The presence of God cannot be handled like cargo, brandished like a weapon, stored like a trophy, or contained by one human certainty. And once that settles in, the old panic softens. The box can vanish. The holy does not. In the end, the box is gone, but the story refuses to go with it. You feel that most clearly in empty places. A room once sealed behind heavy doors still exists in memory, even when the doors are splintered, the lamps are cold, and the floor has long since swallowed its ash. You stand there anyway in your mind, at the edge of that inner chamber where almost nobody went. No music now, no priests shifting nervously in layered robes, no gold flashing in torchlight, just stone, dust, and absence sitting in the room like a final occupant. And somehow absence has weight. Not the loud kind, not battlefield weight, with shouting and trumpets and men doing spectacularly bad planning in public. A quieter weight, the kind that settles on old thresholds, on lintels blackened by old smoke, on walls that once held their breath around something too holy to touch. You move out from that ruined room and into the hills. The paths are dry, narrow, and lined with loose stones that slide under your sandals just enough to keep you irritated. Small caves open in the rock here and there, some no bigger than a storage nook, some deep enough to swallow a man, a rumor, and 3 centuries of absolute nonsense. The air inside them is cool and damp. It smells like limestone, bat droppings, and the stale stillness of places that have not welcomed company in a very long time. You hold your lamp higher. Nothing. Just rough walls, old soot, maybe a broken jar, maybe a bit of bone, maybe the strong feeling that if anyone ever did hide something precious here, they also hid it beneath a thick layer of disappointment. Still, people keep coming. They always do. One more cave, one more mountain shoulder, one more hidden chamber reached by ducking under roots and scraping your elbows raw on rock. Because once a holy object disappears, every dark hole in the earth starts auditioning. Far away, in another land, another chapel keeps its own silence. You stand outside a guarded building while bright cloth stirs in the breeze and incense curls through the doorway. The guardians watch with the steady expression of men who have spent their whole lives saying no. Inside, behind curtains, inside more curtains, in a place you are not entering today or any day, rests something people speak of in lowered voices. Maybe certainty lives there. Maybe memory dressed itself in ceremony and decided that was enough. Either way, the reverence is real. And reverence can outlive proof by a very long time. That is part of the Ark's afterlife. Not just maps and theories and the eternal parade of sweaty men announcing they have finally cracked it, usually while standing beside a hole full of rubble and goat pellets. Also, candles. Also songs. Also processions repeated year after year until children learn the route before they can explain it. Also, old women whispering names into the dark. Also, a community deciding that what matters is not display, but guarding. So the mystery keeps different shapes in different places. In one place, it looks like a sealed room no one opens. In another, it looks like a mountain cave with wind moaning through a crack in the stone. In another, it looks like a manuscript copied by tired hands under weak light, each line preserving one more rumor for the next century to inherit and improve upon with fresh confidence. You can almost see them. A monk bent over parchment, knuckles stained dark, scratching out the old names while tallow smoke creeps into his sleeves. A pilgrim climbing switchback roads with a water skin that tastes like leather and regret. A priest locking a door at dusk. A child hearing the story for the first time and widening their eyes at the thought of a lost holy box that once made nations panic. The physical trail goes cold. The human trail never does. That is why the Ark lingers. Not because anyone can set it in a glass case and finally stop the speculation. That would almost be too tidy. Much like human beings got what human beings always want, which is control, labels, and a nice plaque mounted at eye level. Name of artifact. Date uncertain. Please do not touch. You can practically hear the gift shop being stocked already, but the Ark does not settle for becoming merchandise. It stays harder than that. You feel it in the way each age reaches for it and never quite closes its hand. Empires rise with banners and boots and accountants and very serious opinions about inventory. Then they crumble into broken columns, cracked cisterns, and lizards sunning themselves on what used to be official architecture. The search outlasts them. Languages shift. Borders move. Roads vanish into scrub. The names of kings go fuzzy around the edges. Still, someone is pointing toward a ridge at sunset and saying, "There." Still someone is lowering a lamp into a cavity in the rock. Still someone is standing before a curtained sanctuary and believing that holiness can remain hidden without, becoming unreal. Night comes gently over all of it, over Jerusalem's old heights, where the stone still holds daytime warmth for an hour before giving it up, over valleys where shepherds lead animals into crude enclosures that smell like wool, dung, and the sweet sour rot of trampled grass, over monasteries tucked into hard places where bells ring thin in the cold air, over chapels where oil lamps blink against painted walls, over cave mouths black as shut eyes. And with the dark, the searching changes. Daytime searching is practical. It has ropes and theories and men with scratched forearms making declarations. Night searching is different. At night, the Ark is sought in memory, in prayer, in retelling, in the simple refusal to let the holy be reduced to whatever can be measured, photographed, or hauled out of a trench by someone with dirt in their beard and triumph in their voice. So you sit with the older kind of search. No shovel, no map. Just the long chain of people who kept this absence alive by speaking around it carefully, like people moving around a fire in the dark. They did not all agree. Of course not. Human beings can barely agree on lunch. But they kept handing the mystery forward. Not polished, not solved, just alive. That matters, because some things survive precisely by remaining out of reach. Not everything sacred is meant to end up pinned under museum lighting, while tourists shuffle past with sore feet and weak opinions. Some things endure by staying half-veiled, by refusing to become ordinary, by living in that tense place between memory and longing. The Ark did that. Even missing, it kept doing what it had always done, unsettling people, drawing reverence, resisting possession. You can almost trace its shape without seeing it. A carried thing wrapped in cloth, a dangerous thing hidden behind curtains, a vanished thing, leaving grooves in history where generations kept circling back. And the world around it keeps changing. Temples fall, new sanctuaries rise, dust gathers on abandoned thresholds. Whole cities turn into layered ruins where dogs sleep in shadows and children kick pebbles over buried walls. Markets close, fires burn out, gates sag on their hinges. The people who once argued most loudly about exact locations are buried themselves, and their absolute certainty goes down with them into silence. But the Ark remains in the dark a little longer, not as an object you can inventory, as a memory that still carries heat, as a holy absence that taught people not to confuse nearness with ownership, as the kind of mystery that keeps one lamp burning in one room, one story alive in one family, one guarded tradition standing after stronger things have fallen apart. You do not end with the box found. You end with doors closed for the night, with hills gone black against the sky, with an old chapel lamp trembling behind a curtain, with wind moving over ruined stones that once heard songs, with caves holding their silence, with names still spoken softly. And somewhere, in all that distance and darkness, the Ark endures as it has endured for centuries now, not in one settled coordinate, but in the stubborn memory of people who would not let the holy be reduced to lost property. The trail goes cold. The story does not. The hills are still there. The sealed rooms are still there. The guarded places are still there. Quieter now, but still there. And somewhere, beyond maps, beyond rubble, beyond the last confident voice fading into the night, the story continues.